After a long, hot day on the roads of France, the sprinters emerged through a thick layer of heat to put in an all-out kick to the line. But before they could cross, controversy struck.
Now it's up to Renshaw. Mark Renshaw kicks.
This is serious argy-bargy.
You may find here that Mark Renshaw will be penalised.
Mark Cavendish left the rest of the peloton to battle amongst themselves and blew past the field for his third Tour de France stage win this year. But in the end, his victory came with a price. The best lead-out man in the business, Mark Renshaw, was kicked out of the Tour for his actions.
It was obvious what happened on TV. At one stage there, the Garmin rider, Julian Dean, tried to come over the top of me and forced me into the barriers. The sole resort was I used my head to keep my balance.
It's not normal. When you pull off, you have to ride a straight line. He lets Cav by, and then he tries to crash everyone against the barriers.
Now Cavendish is left without his launching pad. Today the riders will be missing the flats. Instead they encounter a brutal incline to the finish in which an overall contender could attempt to blow the field to pieces atop the Mende Laurent Jalabert. It's controversy, climbs, and contenders all mixed into one. The traveling epic that is the Tour de France is next on Versus. The final climb is one many of the riders know and fear, but before they go up, they'll go through the town of Mende, twice voted the most sporting town in France, used today for the third time in Tour history. Hello everyone, welcome to our Cadillac pre-race show. I'm Craig Hummer. If you haven't heard by now, very interesting news over the past 24 hours at the Tour de France. Yesterday was supposed to be just another routine sprinting stage, but by the end it was anything but. Mark Renshaw, Mark Cavendish's prized lead-out man, has been kicked out of the Tour de France. Here he is on the right, giving a couple headbutts to Garmin Transitions rider Julian Dean. The judges, after looking at that, as well as Renshaw cutting over his line to later block Tyler Farah, they felt that was instance enough to cut him out of the Tour de France. Plenty of reaction after the finish.
I was just doing my job and trying to bring Tyler to the front with 500 to go there. And when I was coming over Renshaw, he didn't seem to like it too much.
It was obvious what happened on TV. At one stage there, the Garmin rider, Julian Dean, tried to come over the top of me. He tried to come in front of me with his elbow left and forced me into the barriers.
I didn't make any movement. All I was doing was bringing Tyler to the front, and then next thing I felt him like leaning on me and hitting me with his head. And then he carried on afterwards and came across on Tyler's line and stopped Tyler from possibly winning the stage.
The sole resort was I used my head to keep my balance. It's part and parcel of sprinting and cycling to use your head when you're a sprinter. I think that was a pretty normal reaction.
Yeah, it's not normal. When you pull off, you have to ride a straight line. He lets Cav by, and then he tries to crash everyone against the barriers. I'm all for riding fast sprints, but you have to think of the safety of everyone.
I believe that I'm one of the fairest sprinters in the peloton. All in all, I'm extremely disappointed with the decision that's being made. I think there's a lot of riders and a lot of people behind my back that believe I was very harshly done by.
Very inappropriate behaviour. It's dangerous behaviour. I wouldn't say they took the victory away from it, but my concern is the welfare for myself and the other riders. We don't need behaviour like that to make it more dangerous.
Time now to welcome in our three sultans of the sprint. Bob, very serious ramifications for the rest of the Tour because of those actions for these two sprinting teams.
Oh, most definitely. For the HTC Columbia squad, that is a serious blow to Mark Cavendish's chances. Mark Renshaw, we've seen him time and time again deliver Cavendish perfectly to the line. Cavendish will not have that advantage over the other sprinters for the rest of the Tour de France, and this is why the headbutts directed at Julian Dean are one thing. That's not the reason that Mark Renshaw was kicked out of the race, and you can see them dicing it pretty hard. This is about 400 meters to go. Cavendish there on the wheel of his teammate Renshaw. 1, 2, and a third headbutt to keep the door open so Cavendish can move to the left and start his sprint for the line. That's Danilo Hondo on the right-hand side of the screen, leading out Alessandro Patacchi. You can see Tyler Farah now moving into position to start his sprint. this is when it gets to be problematic for the officials. They do not want to see Mark Renshaw do anything except now come straight back. But if you look at the lines in the middle of that road, you'll see that Renshaw moves to his left in a very radical fashion, going 70 kilometers an hour. It doesn't look that bad in slow motion, but at the heat of the moment, this they can't accept. Tyler Farah has to reach out to prevent him from going into the barriers and causing a really would be a very extreme crash. So Renshaw then gets the message from Farah, but it's a little bit too late for Tyler Farah. And I think that's why they had to take a pretty severe penalty against Renshaw, is because he pushed Tyler Farah against the barriers, not because he headbutted Julian Dean. That's debatable. They might have relegated him to the back of the field for that, but it was 2 infractions within 100 meters, and you just can't have that. It does not send the right message to all the sprinters. You would turn the race into a bloodbath. In the next 2 sprints we have Bordeaux and Paris, so they've put Mark Renshaw out of the race. I think they were justified in doing so.
At least 2 sides to this story, Paul. Many ways to interpret these final meters.
Yeah, actually, I disagree with Bob on this occasion, because sprinting is a daredevil part of the sport. You have to take risks. Sprints are won and lost by centimeters. They're won and lost by fractions of a second. If you have a look at this, my interpretation, my take on this is, whenever you look at the lead-out train, you've got Bernie Eisel at the front there. You've got Mark Renshaw sitting in 2nd place, Mark Cavendish in 3rd. Now, the idea of what they try and do here is what they've always done, is they wait until they've just got 2 riders left. Now, Cavendish there is in an ideal position. You can start to see Julian Dean moving up on the right-hand side there. The plan is for Cavendish to come up through that door. That's an open door, and that's the plan that they've adopted. If you look at 9 or 10 of the last sprints that we've seen Mark Cavendish do. Now, what I can see happening next is you just see, once we start to move a little bit forward, Bernie Eisel gets himself out of the way. But what the Kiwi rider wants to do, he wants to close that door. You can see Julian Dean coming up now. Now watch Julian Dean. Now he's the guy who's moving off his line as well. There you can still see Cavendish in 2nd position, ideally situated to come up through the inside on the left to finish his sprint. Now Dean knows he wants to close that door. He comes up and he actually does, I think, the first error by starting to lean on Mark Renshaw. And here you can see he's actually succeeded, because he's pushed Renshaw up against the barriers. Renshaw, being a great track rider, now wants to come back again, pushes him over to the right-hand side, opening the door for Cav. Now all of a sudden Cav sees the open door. He can feel on the far side there, he can feel Pataki starting to move, so he decides that's the moment. The door's still open, I've got to go. I just want to ask you one other question, guys. Basketball, is that a no contact sport? If we stopped the sport every time there was contact, would we have a game?
Not the NBA. No, we wouldn't. Phil, Robbie Hunter has now been lost from Garmin Transitions due to injury. Mark Renshaw has now been lost from HTC Columbia because of being kicked out of the Tour. There are still at least 2 sprint stages left. Which of these 2 teams has an advantage?
It's still Mark Cavendish. He's still the fastest sprinter, and he did it himself yesterday at 375 metres out. He'll still do it. He's still the best man in the world. But to come back to that clash, you know, the disqualification was for unsportsmanlike racing. It wasn't either the headbutt or the switching out of Tyler Farah. There are 2 precedents. One, the headbutt. It's happened before in the Tour de France to Eric Zabel, who's done it, and to Robbie McEwen, who's done it. They were relegated to the back of the pack. So in that excuse, we should have put the leader back to the 110th position in the case of Renshaw, and Julian Dean should have been there with him, because he was equally to blame for what happened. But the taking out of Tyler Farah, that's far more serious, and there are precedents there for disqualifying the rider that comes back like that and takes out the man behind him.
That was everything at the front of the peloton. But behind the overall contenders, they didn't know this was going on. They didn't care that this was going on. They knew once they were in the 3-kilometer mark, they let the sprinters do their thing. And, Paul, that means Andy Schleck will now spend his 3rd day in yellow.
Well, he's looking very comfortable. I think Andy Schleck is going to enjoy the finish here, because it's a chance for him to maybe grapple a few extra seconds ahead of Alberto Contador. So absolutely no change in the overall standings. And these guys were very attentive on the run in towards the finish.
We take a look, Phil, at our Michelob Ultra overall standings. Still the same time gap between Schleck and Contador, 41 seconds.
Yeah, the battle is still for 3rd place. There's an awful lot of riders can get 3rd place. I did know that Lance Armstrong lost some time yesterday, finishing in the 2nd bunch, so clearly he's not thinking of 3rd place. Leipheimer, though, it could certainly be his. 3:59 he is behind at the moment, and it's advantage Leipheimer in the time trial, so he could still finish 3rd in this Tour, I feel. Lance Armstrong down there, a little bit of extra time lost yesterday. He's in 32nd place.
We'll shift gears when we return and talk about today's stage, as well as our Cadillac performance predictions after this. The Croix Neuve may be the final nail in the coffin today for some riders. But in 1995, it was the launching pad for one of France's most famous cyclists, Laurent Jalabert, who won here on Bastille Day, July 14th, and they now honored him by naming this climb after him, the Mende Laurent Jalabert. Alberto Contador knows a thing or two about this climb as well. During the spring stage race Paris-Nice, he's won here in 2007 with the Discovery colors on his back, and then just a few months ago, with very different weather conditions, flying the Astana flag. Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to our Cadillac pre-race show. Last segment, they were the sultans of the sprints. Today, right now, they are the barristers of perhaps the breakaway guys, because I think today's one of those days where the overall contenders might be willing to let everybody go.
Yeah, the wonderful racing roads right through the Ardèche here in the department of the Lozère. It is for a big breakaway to get away today. They don't really matter about the destiny of the yellow jersey. Yes, there will be a big fight on the slopes up to the finishing line here between Andy Schleck and Alberto Contador, because they're split by just a few seconds, but they won't be making the first moves.
I think we're looking here at a lot of very tired bike riders, because we've had a lot of racing since the start of this race. The first 3 days, very nervous, very tactical. Then we had this big campaign through the Alps. And I can tell you from experience that riding on these roads with this heat, it's as if you're stuck to the ground. There'll be a lot of tired bodies today. And that's why I think the men who are brave enough to go out on the breakaway today will succeed.
I think it's going to be a bit of a GC battle in overall contenders. There is still a spot open on the podium. So anybody with any energy, it's been a very tough tour so far, could attack on the final climb, get some time. We saw Nicolas Roche move up 3 places in the overall standings on a stage that we didn't think anything would happen with the overall men. He snuck away at the end, and now he's in 13th overall. That's a great result.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of questions to be answered today, but Paul, as we look at our Radio Shack route, this is one of those days, as you've described them before, that has a sting in the tail.
Well, this is a serious sting in the tail if we have a quick look at the route. We're continuing our march down towards the southwest of the country, and on the horizon in a couple of days' time will be looming the high spots of the Pyrenees, but we haven't actually got there quite yet. Riders leaving not too far away from where they finished yesterday at Bourg-de-Péage for a long ride through a very undulating and difficult race route, I would have to say, on their way down to the finish line here in Mende. But really, it's all about the profile. If we have a quick look at the profile, you can see reasonably flat to begin with, but then the rest of the day is on this big plateau at around about 3,000 feet, and that climb up to the finish is what it will be today, the sting in the tail.
That is your Radio Shack route. As always, time now for our SunGuard stage facts, Phil.
Yes, as we say, beautiful countryside today from Bourg-de-Péage to Mende, 210 kilometres, about the difference between Des Moines and Cedar Rapids. A third finish at Mende, last winner here, Marcus Serrano in 2005. Only 2 sprint points today. The big one is the Category 2 climb up to the finish.
As we all know, amongst the peloton, it's usually the sprinters that have the egos, like to puff out their chest. The GC contenders, a little bit more reserved. Phil, I've always thought of you as one of the overall contenders, but today, in terms of our yellow jersey, a little bit of smack talking this morning. You feel today it's yours. You're taking it back.
Well, I won't be taking it back today unless I've misread the points, but I will be taking it back. It's only a matter of time now, because Mark Cavendish played for me instead of for Craig now. I think it's now very predictable from now on, and I shall probably win every day.
All right, there you have it. That is Phil's prediction. We go to our Cadillac performance predictions, time of the day where we get to sum up where we all stand. Points for all of us except Paul Sherwin yesterday. I maintain that narrow margin, so I will keep hold of the Cadillac yellow jersey for yet another day. And this was one of those days, guys. It's one of those days where having first pick.
None of us are going to get points today.
Well, that's what I was about to say. Having first pick today, I don't feel was much of an advantage, and I really, after having 24 hours to sleep on it, am not very confident in my pick, but I'm going to go with Johan van Sumeren, the Belgian who competes for the American Garmin Transitions team. He's been 5th at Paris-Nice. His best stage finish this year was on the cobblestones, 7th position. I think Garmin, after yesterday, Day is going to want to make a statement. They can't do it with Tyler Farah because of the incline. They aren't going to be able to do it with Ryder Hesjedal because he's too close on GC. So the next guy they could do it with is the tall man, 6'5". He's going to use all that power up the hill.
Excellent. First time
Did I make my argument convincing enough? Are you guys buying it?
No.
No, that's the first time I've ever seen a race leader commit suicide.
Well, we'll see how long I last, won't we? Bob, it's now your turn.
I've got Alexander Kolobnev. A lot of teams in the Tour de France. Almost none of them, except a few, have won stages. Katusha will be pretty desperate to get a stage win. I think the only man left standing on that roster is this man, Alexander Kolobnev. He said before the Tour he wants to go out and win a stage eventually. This is a perfect race course for him. He's won similar races, one-day classics in the past. Watch for Kolobnev at least to be in the break. Maybe not win, but maybe get some points. It's a crapshoot. No points for the man.
Paul is right next to, literally wringing his hands, licking his chops, ready to pounce.
Well, I'm not actually. If the truth be known, I think we all believe that it's going to be a breakaway today. I've picked this guy before, and probably the only reason I've picked him again today is because I like his victory salute. He's got the best victory salute in the whole of the sport, so I'm hoping that he's going to come up with the win. Juan Antonio Fletcher. In fact, of all those teams that are still looking for something out of the Tour, Team Sky have still got to get them something as well. So I'm waiting for the Fletcher to come and show us his bow.
At the start of our little Cadillac Performance Prediction segment, Phil, you were very confident. Are you still as confident hearing our picks?
Oh, I'm even more confident now I've heard your picks. I mean, none of those can get near the finish today. But in fact, I think Bob is right. We might all be getting no points. But I'm going for Joaquim Rodriguez today because this is his finish. He's not far out the top three when he's finished up here before. He's a climber. He's an opportunist. And if it's not to be a favourite of the race, then it's him, Joaquim Rodriguez.
All right. The experts. I'm just along for the ride. Hopefully
experts.
You're playing along with yourself at home, and you'll have a better pick today. Almost every Tour de France stage this year has kept the commentators on their toes. We anxiously await what transpires today.
The 2010 Tour de France pre-race on Versus.
Andy Schleck's 41-second lead in the Tour de France might look a little bit shaky today as we go up the final steep climb to the finish in Mende. Contador knows it well. Will he attack? Now on our 13th day for the riders in the Tour de France. Today we move on from Bourg-de-Péage to Mende, and the town down there is 1,400 feet below the finishing line. We finish on an airstrip, and it is the steepest climb of the race so far to reach the finishing line. Who will stand there tonight in yellow and the stage winner? Hi everybody, welcome back to our coverage of the Tour de France here on Versus. Phil Liggett with me as ever in the saddle is Paul Sherwin. Well, if you look at the contours, it doesn't look a terribly difficult day, but believe me, it is a very difficult day. Narrow roads, always riding at altitude, and at the very end, there is the climb, Paul, that we often talk about as a real killer.
It is a real killer, first used in the Tour de France in 1995, and on that occasion it was Laurent Jalabert who got the victory. But it's the road and the approach to get to this climb, Phil, that really makes this stage so difficult, because as you mentioned, we are riding over a plateau on average at 3,000 feet. But to me, the most difficult thing in this part of France is the pavement. The pavement tends to melt because of the heat, and the pavement is also extremely rough, and it feels, as the bike riders say, as if you're stuck to the road.
Well, I'll tell you what, as they come away from the town of Mende, you can bet your life that Contador and Schleck must go head-to-head. 41 seconds between them could be reversed or doubled on this climb up to the line. But will they be racing for first place, or will there be a breakaway in the lead? At the moment, we do have a breakaway in the lead. The other competitions, too, are hot. The green jersey changed shoulders yesterday to Pataki, but you know, Paul, he could go another way. In the polka dot jersey here, it went back to Jerome Pino, but he's on the defensive. He's already fallen off today.
Well, he has already fallen off today, and it's a very close competition so far, but there's a lot of points available today. Jérôme Pinot has got 92 points to Anthony Charteau's 90, and in third place, still that Frenchman, Christophe Moreau, at 39 years of age. He's looking for 62 points.
The points available out on course are 3 third category climbs. They're only 4, 3 and 2 points. However, there's 2 second category climbs, 10 points for the first one. However, there's 20 points because points are doubled on the last climb of the day.
So we'll find out first of all what happened early in the day. All smiles at the start. His third day in the Maillot Jaune as he jokes with his team, but they're in for a very tough day in the saddle, believe me.
Yes, this is a very hard part of France to race in, but Andy Schleck, I have to say, looking more and more comfortable at the start of this event, and it looks as if he's getting very much used to his yellow jersey. Right out from the start, the race neutralised flag drawn in, and a very rapid start. 49 kilometres covered in the first hour of racing.
And the world champion Cadel Evans sat at the back there out of the start blocks on the first climb of the day at Barthelemy. Federico was in the breakaway. Hejadal was up there. He's in second place over the top with the Portuguese rider Costa in third place. Good to see rider Hejadal on the offensive. He's the highest placed man in the breakaway. On to climb number 2.
Second climb of the day, a third category climb, and this time Anthony Charteau, second in the King of the Mountains classification, came out, and you could see the excitement there as he gets 4 points and he goes up into the lead in that competition.
Exactly what he wanted. He's back in the polka dot if all things go well before the end of the day. Climb number 3 now, and this is Sandy Cassar, the winner the other day. He's over the line first, and Charteau another point in the bag there or two, because that was a much tougher climb. So overall, Cassar, Charteau on that line, but overall Charteau has got himself a nice little lead now by being in the breakaway. Pinot did fall off, and the breakaway went. He's rejoined in the peloton as we speak. Sprint today, sorry, Paul. Gregor Bolet was winning there. He's taking the points not for himself, but to stop anybody else taking them, particularly Hushoft. He's on the same team as Pataki. Hushoft getting second, and Sipsov in the breakaway. He's in third.
Well, they're both tied on points here, 161 each now for Alessandro Pataki and Thor Hushoft. Theoretically, if it remains like this to the end of the day, it stays on the shoulders of Alessandro Pataki because he has 2 stage wins. However, there is another sprint point out on the course.
Paulo Sipsov, he was in the breakaway here, took a nasty tumble. We didn't see him go down, but very quickly he was snatching a bike. And just when the wounds of a previous crash of a week ago were healing, he's opened them all up again.
No, very difficult looked after on the move by the race doctor here on the motorbike on this occasion, making sure he keeps him strapped up and cleaned up to stay in this leading 18-man breakaway, which is currently just around about 2 minutes off the front end of the main field.
Some big names in the breakaway, and they are chasing very, very hard today. We're going to see the most beautiful scenery, some people say, and I'm one of them, in France today. So I hope you're watching in high definition. The pictures will be magnificent. The weather, well, it's locked in, isn't it, on Neutrogena weather. 91 Fahrenheit today. Slight winds again. Forecast sunshine all day. Even I could be a weather forecaster in France.
It's quite easy at the moment. Rider update. Well, Marc Renshaw disqualified from the Tour de France yesterday for what was deemed to be irregular and dangerous riding. And so one rider didn't start. That was Samy Moulin. And for once, an honest bike rider, he said he couldn't start today because he was too tired.
Honest man. So that leaves us with 177 left in this race. Still 10 teams are intact. 22 teams were out at the start in Rotterdam, which seems an awful long time ago now. On the pulse, Chris Anker Sorensen, one of them.
Well, it'll be interesting to see his heart rate today, as long as alongside him Jens Voigt and of course Manuel Cinziato, the Italian rider on Team Liquigas. We'll have a look at heart rates, which I think will be rather high out on the course. And just before we lose sight of that little geological outcropping there, Phil, that's the Gerbier de Jean. It's 8 million years old, and you're probably happy to know that that in fact is the source of the River Loire.
Well, that's the longest river in France, just over 1,000 kilometres, 625 miles long. It goes out into the Atlantic, as we're now beginning to look at the leading 18 riders. Well, 18 riders, keep an eye on the names as they flash through. We'll tell you the dangerous ones, though. Rider Hejadal has most to gain here, 5:42 behind this morning. Also, though, Alexander Vinokurov, 6:31 down. There's Cloden as well. These boys, and this is the reason, it's being a very, very hard day for Saxo Bank. They can't let this breakaway go, and it's hovering around 2 minutes. It's been this way for well over an hour and a half now.
Well, we've had 2 third category climbs behind us, a second category climb which we went over a little while back. We've gone through the feeding station, but if you just look at the profile, Phil, it is a lumpy plateau that the riders continue to race along. I've often talked about an ideal breakaway composition. Well, what we're looking at there, this 18-man leading group with Hejadal, Cloden and Alexander Vinokurov in it, is not an ideal situation for the overall leader Andy Schleck.
Well, if I were to holiday in France, this is where I would come. These roads are made for the cyclist. We are right in the heart here. There's no freeways around us. You really feel you're in a lost world. And there's plenty of these country lanes which duck and dive through beautiful villages, beautiful Roman aqueducts and viaducts. And we're cutting a real rough trail through the middle of them today. You're going to see some stunning pictures, I'll tell you. And it is a hard day. This is a serious day, as the riders try now to chase this breakaway down. They cannot let it gain time.
No, they certainly can't, because if you start to allow Andreas Kloden to climb back up in the overall standings, or even Alexander Vinokourov, or why not the Canadian rider Ryder Hagedal, then you're starting to reshape the top end of the overall classification, and you cannot give riders like those three we just mentioned any time back, having taken it away from them in the Alpine passes.
He's Lloyd Mondry here. He's got half of the River Loire on his back, I think. He's now chasing to rejoin his teammates and distribute the bottles. Nicky Sorensen, the champion of Denmark, on Saxo Bank. He's doing work at the front. All the boys in black are Saxo Bank, just making sure that Andy Schleck is keeping a close eye on Ryder Hagedal. Paul, I take my hat off to Hagedal. This was a really good move by the Canadian.
It was a great move, and in fact, it just cast in my mind what we talked a little earlier, Phil, about this stage in 1995. Well, the reason the big attack happened in 1995 was because the Once team wanted to put pressure onto Miguel Indurain, and that's why they went out on the attack with Laurent Jalabert. Jalabert moved up into third place overall after a very long breakaway on exactly the same kind of stage as the one today. So there's two battles going on. You've got the teams trying to put pressure onto Contador and onto Andy Schleck, but you've also got at the end, on the final climb of the day, Contador, Sammy Sanchez and Andy Schleck, I think, would be looking to try and get time over each other.
Got to. It's got to come down to the climb out of Mende for those three boys, but will these boys get there first, or really the breakaway? Well, there we are. The scene is set. We'll take our first break. Rejoin us in the heat of France. Welcome back to the beauty here as we start to cut into the Ardèche now. 130 miles again beneath a baking hot sun as the riders head to the town of Mende and above it onto the airstrip for the big finish today. And 18 riders got clear. It was a real tough race to get them clear, but in the breakaway is Ryder Hagedal, Andreas Kloden, Alexander Vinokourov. They could upset the leaderboard tonight if they get away.
Well, just to put it into perspective, Phil, in the first hour of the race, 31 miles were covered, and it certainly was not a flat part of the course either. So important everybody felt that this stage is going to be.
Well, our cameras, this look like the Lac des Sales, I think it is, Paul, is it?
Yep, it's a volcanic crater lake at an altitude of 1,000 meters, 3,000 feet. It covers around about 90 hectares. Its circumference is 5 kilometers, and it was named the Lac des Sales by the local community way back in 1929.
That was when it was created. It's a pretty good fishing lake, I would imagine, as well here. Remember, we're running at around 3,000 feet above sea level. There's the man of the most again. You can never keep Thor Hushovd out of it, can you? There he is at the back in the race wearing his Norwegian champion's jersey. He's looking for points for that green jersey. He's got some already today. He's equal first with Pataki. If he can just hang on until we get down to Lagogne, then he'll get some more points, I'm sure, and he could be in green again tonight.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Phil, if it wasn't for the presence of three riders in this breakaway, Hagedal, Kloden and Vinokourov, it would be gone. Yeah, and three of the riders in the breakaway have previously won stages in the Tour de France. Alexander Vinokourov has won 3, Sandy Cassar 3, and Thor Hushovd has won 8 out of 10 Norwegian victories at the Tour. I think that's a phenomenal record.
Absolutely superb. He is their #1 star in Norway, and they are glued to the Tour de France during the month of July, and many thousands of Norwegians actually come to the event now. We've seen a lot of Norwegian flags. So as we're looking at the bunch here crossing through over a narrow bridge and continuing on, time to remind you of our Cadillac Lead the Pack sweepstakes. You log on to versus.com/lead the pack. Do it every day. A chance to win a trip for 2 people to the 2011 Tour de France and the Cervelo R3 bicycle. You can also win a yellow or a polka dot jersey like we use in the Cadillac Performance Predictions. And the word today, well, we could have all guessed that. Cadillac is the word today. There's the peloton, and it's put a lot of pressure today now on Saxo Bank, weakening them before in 2 days' time we actually get up to the Pyrenees with a big hard finish there. We're just about scraping the slopes of the second category climb now, Pat. Paul, why do I call you Pat?
I have no idea at all. 3.9 kilometers long, peaks out at 1,000 meters in altitude. Average grade 5%. At the top, it's 77.5 kilometers to go. And quite a nice name as well, because Côte de la Mouline. And when you talk about a mouline is something like a coffee grinder. So I think you're going to have to turn the legs around today like a coffee grinder at a high cadence to get up this one.
And I thought it was a baby muscle. As a moule.
Well, yeah, well, it's a good thought, yeah, but no, you're wrong, sorry, on this occasion. Don't worry, it was a good guess.
Well, the peloton, there's still a hunting here as they continue on. 140, they're not letting it go, but think of the work that's having to be done now by Team Saxo Bank. It's going to hurt. All right, well, don't miss an all-new Daily Line on Versus today at 11:30 a.m. and tonight at 11 p.m. Liam and the gang are in the mix again, and they'll break down all the big sports stories. Jenna's all the best from her blogs. Rob breaks down the numbers, and Reese drops the hammer on the biggest stories from the night in sports. That's the Daily Line today at 11:30 a.m. and tonight at 11 p.m. only here on Versus. So as the peloton snakes its way through the beauty of the Ardèche, heading into the department of the Lozère, we'll take another break while they work out just what are they going to do with Ryder Hagedal. Good move, Ryder. Let's hope it works. Well, considered a testament to the ancient architecture of the region, the Bourg-de-Péage farm, I'll get that right shortly, has been standing on a harsh wind-stepped plateau for over 500 years. And supported by stone framework, the roof covers 900 meters and it weighs 150 metric tons. And used until 1970, this impressive structure here could house up to 45 cows. That's the Bourg-de-Péage farm in the region where we are today in the Tour de France. Well, there is Alberto Contador. He knows what it's like to win on the airfield at Mende, although they don't quite go as far onto the airfield as we do with today's stage of the Tour de France.
No, it's about 1.5 kilometers after the top of the climb, but it's a very difficult climb. It's exceptionally steep, and it's the steepest climb of the Tour de France that we've had so far, with the majority of it being in excess of 11%, and that's down towards the bottom. It gets a little bit easier to the top, Phil, because it actually is only 10.5% the average gradient up there, but it is very difficult, and there have always been time gaps recorded at the top of this climb historically.
Well, this is a picture we expected to see. Number 1 locked onto the wheel of number 11, the two top men in this year's Tour de France. Number 1 happy to let number 11's team do all of the pace-making here. There is concern about the breakaway. Ryder Hagedal is up there. Alexander Vinokurov, who is a teammate, don't forget, of Alberto Contador, he is also up there. They could be leapfrogging another player into the top 5 or 6 riders.
The way this race is being ridden out today, Phil, it's going to really hurt a lot of the bike riders in this event. This was a day that maybe they thought they'd have an easier ride, as they've had over the last couple of days, with a non-important break getting clear of 7 or 8 riders. It's a long ride. You can see where we started, just to the north of Valence over there at Bourg-de-Péage. We ride basically pretty much in a southwesterly direction. That's where we are currently. P for peloton. The finish is right down there on the little red spot down in the southwesterly part of that map, and that is Mende, but we actually finish above the town of Mende on this very difficult climb up to the aerodrome.
And as you can see from the map, there's no freeways around this area. You've got to go on these narrow roads if you want to travel into the region. And today most of those roads are closed for the passage of the Tour de France. It's taken a long while, but they've edged out just over 2 minutes, so the pressure's really on Saxo Bank to keep control of that breakaway. There'll be no easing up in the front group today, because these boys up front will actually believe they can win the stage. And it's a big coup too for Case de Pon. Well, not so much as a coup, because Radio Shack also have a rider in here just to the right. Claude is here, and Perget is here for Case de Pon. They are locked together in a real duo battle for the team prize this year.
And that's something that Case d'Epargne for many years, in whatever form you might remember them, whether it was Reynolds, Banesto, iBanesto.com, Iles Baleares, that's been the name of the team as it's evolved. There's the top of the climb. Chateau just peeping through there to get himself once again maximum points ahead of Sandy Cassar. To finish that, it's always been an important thing for the Spanish team to win the team classification.
They do have two riders up here today, the team leaders, case apart. If it were to succeed, they would go a little bit further ahead here if they had the chance. This is Charteau, Anthony Charteau, who is the new leader now of the King of the Mountains. He's just won the climb of the Côte de la Mouline ahead of Sandy Cassar, so he's had a great day so far.
Yeah, a day when he probably didn't expect to. This is a man who could probably rival the King of the Mountains competition in the big Alpine and Pyrenean passes, but it was on this very strange stage that he's actually managed to pull back his lead in that competition. Alexander Vinokourov will be a dangerous man to have in here for Team Astana, and it actually takes a lot of pressure off the shoulders of Alberto Contador. At the start of the day, Vinokourov was only 14th at 6 minutes and 31 seconds. So that's why there's such a hard chase going on in the main field behind. And just looking down at that peloton, Phil, knowing these roads as I do in this part of France, I'm so happy I'm not racing.
This is the green jersey of Alessandro Patacchi at the back of the main field at the moment. I think he's just dropping back for a drink probably, or is he in trouble? Looking for his team car, I think. Overall, Chateau has built himself a nice lead today, 107 ahead of Pinot, 92. Pinot went into the day 2 points ahead of Chateau. So he'll be saying goodbye to his polka dot jersey tonight to the other Frenchman. They've had their grips on that jersey ever since this tour started, the French.
Well, Andy Schleck, he knows the climb here at the finish in Mende quite well. He's been here before, as has Alberto Contador. So far, though, Contador has taken the advantage over almost all of the other contenders whenever they've met on the slopes of the climb up to Mende.
People on the right, they're saying the Tour de France is passing our front door. So out come the tables and chairs and balloons. It's a big thing for the French people to see this race, which for many of the peoples in this region only see it on television. So this is a huge escape today, and it's going to cause a little bit of problem. Bolet, number 202, he's been the pacemaker on the flat stages all day for Patacchi. Now he's gone off in the breakaway. It's his first Tour de France too. Beginning to look like he's developing into a super bike rider. There's the peloton. The clock continues to count at the moment. The gap is going up ever so slowly, but it is going up, and this is going to give us, as the simple spectators, a terrific end to the day of racing today for sure. They will not want Vinokourov, Cloden, Hejerdal to steal time today. Just on 2:30 then, as they top this third category climb. Oh, there's only one climb left, but it is the one up to the finish. So as the pacemaking continue to help out now, this is from on the front. Here's the Dolto, I think, back on the front. We will pop over now and ask Liam what's on the daily line. Liam. Welcome back. A very quick day in the Tour de France today, where we're thinking we might be slumbering at this time, but we are not. 18 riders have got clear, and the gap is stretching to 2 minutes and 39 seconds now. And rider Hejerdal of Canada, highly placed, is in that breakaway. Well, all of the climbs of the day now, except the big one at the end, are behind us. Double points for the King of the Mountains. Those are the regulations. Any hill at the end, second, first or category, we double the climbing points on them.
Well, Phil, this is serious pressure to put on a racer, especially on a day when maybe Team Saxo Bank thought they would get a slightly easier ride. The fact that they've got rider Hejerdal, Vinokourov and Andreas Cloden in that leading group means they have to chase this group down and not allow it to get a big margin. So there will be a lot of pressure put onto the main field and all of the riders in this race as well, because it's a difficult course today to actually try and hide in the peloton. These roads are hard and they will leave traces later on in the Tour.
And just look at the crowd here, politely applauding as well as cheering the people they see as the greatest athletes. They've come here to enjoy the sight of the Tour de France. Remember, this is one of the few sporting events left where it is purely that. It's not made for television. It is made on the countryside itself. There's no stadium involved in this one, and these people have come to enjoy the passage of, for many of them, a unique happening. So they get the first glimpse today of the leaders of the Tour de France. And when they've all gone by, apart from the yellow jersey, which stands out, they all want to say, did you see him? Well, we don't know which man they're talking about, of course, but they're all looking for their favourites.
But everybody looks for the yellow jersey primarily because they know that's the man who's currently leading the race. And here this year, for the moment, it's Andy Schleck. And vive le Tour en France 2 et 3. and that's the French television networks that help to bring these magnificent pictures of France. If you are riding the Tour de France stage today, Phil, you don't want to be hanging on in the back of that tail there. Those are guys, and if you look at the gaps that are starting to appear, who are seriously under a spot of bother. It really is very difficult. Thor Hushovd has got himself into the lead of this 18-man group, and he's a crafty rider. He always looks for a move like this. The points jersey is generally for the guy who finishes in the top 10 or 15 places of all the individual stages. However, there are points out on the course where you can earn points at intermediate sprint points, and that's exactly what Thor Hushovd has done in the past to win that competition, and that's exactly what he's doing today.
A lot of Sky riders at the back here. These are the riders at the back, the brown jerseys there owned by the Futon boys, first timers in the Tour. They do have a man in the breakaway though, and it's continuing in the ascendancy. 2:26 at the moment, and there's still 72 kilometers to go. So we'll take a break. See you in a moment. Race update on the Tour de France today. There's Lance Armstrong smiling. I think he's having a little word with the cameraman here, actually. We can't hear it, but he's actually talking to our cameraman. He's smiling away there. He wasn't smiling earlier on. I have to tell you, he was in the wrong half of a split in the peloton, along with Andreas Kloden, but they got back okay. It was a little bit of a chase, and Kloden immediately got into the 18-man breakaway. So fortunes changed pretty quickly in the Tour de France. Not too far down the line of his men is Contador, the yellow jersey of Select, relying on his troops today to keep that pace high. And so the riders in the Tour de France putting all of the pressure on Saxo Bank. Fabien Cancellara, from the race leader in the opening week to the main workhorse on the flatter stages now, and that's his job on this year's Tour de France. The world and Olympic time trial champion really having to work very hard now. You're right that Lamprey seemed to be playing in the game here and sending one man to help out in the chase, because they've got the green jersey on the shoulders of Pataki, and it's equal first, the situation in that competition now with Thor Hushovd, because he won the sprint from the breakaway, and second in the sprint rather from the breakaway, so he's got just enough points to go equal first.
Yeah, but they've got 17 kilometers before the next sprint point, and I don't think they're going to wipe away 2 minutes and 20 seconds in 17 minutes. So I think really Lamprey have sent their riders up there just as a token rather than anything else. Most of the work over the last 10 minutes, Phil, has been done by Team Saxo Bank. They've done around about 77% of the pacemaking at the front, while Lamprey have come up to help them out have done 23.
All to be expected, I suspect, because the team leaders have got to do it, and the rest will just wait. The sprinters are many of them are still in the pack. Most of them, if not all of them, will not be thinking of winning today because they won't make the climb. It's an average gradient of 10.2%. That is the steepest climb we've seen in gradient terms since the Tour began. So the sprinters won't be there at the top.
No, they certainly won't be there at the top, and they will do whatever they can to throw out all of the sandbags just to try and survive up to the top of this climb. This is the leading group of 18 riders, and it's really been a very difficult group to form at the front end of the main field. There were no tickets given out in this occasion. It was a very hard, long chase before the breakaway formed. 49 kilometers covered in that first hour of racing over what is very difficult terrain. We now spend the rest of the afternoon pretty much on this plateau at around about 1,000 meters, but from now on there is not 1 inch of flat in this race route.
Now up and down, rolling, ducking and diving through beautiful villages, over magnificent Roman structures. We stay in the Ardèche for quite a way, and then we briefly go into the Haute Loire, the High Loire, but we're only there for about 2 kilometers, and then we swing across back into the Ardèche for even less, and then back into the Lozère, which is the department we finish in.
Yeah,
now, there's the local padre applauding the riders, wishing them all the best. The riders race through as they head towards the hills again, down towards Mende today. Case de Paul have made a good move. They've got 2 riders in this breakaway and only 1 from Radio Shack, and that's Kloden. So they are going ahead in the team race, if of course it succeeds, and one is certainly no longer sure of that.
Well, it's nice to see once again one of the seasoned campaigners has made himself a position in that breakaway as well. Mario Ertz. He seems to be rejuvenated in the Tour de France this year.
Yes, he does actually, very much so. Peloton still being driven. It's a long peloton today. They're not slumbering here at all, are they now? Join the Aquaphor Le Tour Challenge now and ride against diabetes. Join the Tour de France. Track your daily rides to donate miles and money to the American Diabetes Association Tour de Cure. Sign up and start pedaling now at versus.com and mapmyride.com. The peloton, the long thin line at the front showing it's a painful day for everybody today. It is another scorcher here. This is the breakaway, and it's the biggest breakaway we've seen. But in the breakaway is Ryder Hejjedal, the Garmin Transitions rider, who has taken over the team leadership since the accident to Christian van der Velde. Looks as though Lance Armstrong's happy with his day in the Tour de France today. We'll take another break. Rejoin us in just a moment.
Select eyes on.
Let's have a look. There's our Cadillac Tour Leaders jerseys today. Andy Schleck keeps yellow for a third day. Alessandro Petacu has taken back the green jersey, held it very early on for a day. The Mountains return to the shoulders of Jerome Pino, but he's gone already today. And Andy Schleck also leading in the young rider. Well, we had that controversial sprint finish yesterday, the disqualification of Mark Renshaw. So let's talk now with Rolf Aldag of HTC Columbia with Frankie Andreu.
Rolf, yesterday Mark Renshaw was disqualified. I'm sure you had a chance to look at the sprint. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, it's really complicated sprint. You see a lot of moving parts there and a lot of different situations. What I have seen is, and this is why I don't agree to the situation, is the first bad moves comes definitely not from Renshaw. The first bad move comes from Julian Dean. He tries to ride him into the fence, and Renshaw tries to keep him away with his head. He does that twice successfully. The third one was too much. He says that. He says, you know, I was so stressed and I just did not know what he did do the third time to me. So that's why I did it the third time, just to make sure that, you know, you just can't do it to me. I just can't ride into the fence. For safety reasons, he did not take his hands from the handlebar. He did it with the head. It looks dramatically on television, but everybody who has experience in sprinting knows that's a lot more safe than taking your hands from the handlebar. You see that, by the way, from Tyler. He nearly pushes himself into the fence while he, you know, tries to get a hand on Renshaw, and it's just more dangerous. So overall, I think, you know, it's not good for us. It's not good for the race that Renshaw is at home. It definitely lowers our chances. It doesn't make the sprint more safe for the next upcoming sprint stages like Bordeaux and Paris, because, you know, Renshaw lines it out, Renshaw speeds it up. But we're looking forward to have some more sprints. I mean, the really bad news for me is also, and hurts me a little bit, everybody forgets what a great sprint Cavendish has done. You know, he went from, I don't know, 350 meters and nobody was even close to him. He won the race. You know, he definitely was not in the way of anybody. And he was by far the fastest sprinter, and that's pretty fast forgotten. So it would be great if we look forward and try to do that again with a big focus on Cavendish, that he can prove another time that he's the fastest man.
Yes, well, there's no doubt that Cavendish is the fastest man, but it'll be interesting to see the couple of stages which remain for the sprinters and just how Mark works out the run into the line, because one-on-one, there's nobody in the world can beat him right now, but they know it, and that's why I think all the problems are starting in the first place. Right at the front, the blue jerseys today of Astana keeping number 1 Alberto Contador very close to number 11 in yellow Andy Schleck, because that 41 seconds on the final climb of the day, which is a 10% climb of just on 4 kilometers, could make those seconds disappear in the favor of Alberto, or Schleck may hit him hard and gain a few more, which he needs.
Well, it's the kind of climb that really does suit Alberto Contador, who's an explosive climber, and the gradient here and the climb up to Mende really does, I think, suit Alberto Contador. But with the form that we've seen Andy Schleck's got at the moment, and if he's come out of the Alps and he's still recuperating and recovering well overnight, he too could put in a stinging response to Alberto Contador's attacks, and we will have a very good showdown.
And there are those riders too. The battle for third place is a real one between a bunch of riders, and so they could all be looking for seconds today to climb up the overall. Sandy Sanchez is looking very good at the moment as he sits in third place overall, the Olympic champion. This 18-man breakaway is a very serious move. This is not your opportunist early morning break hoping they can gamble on the finishing ahead of the race, and 9 times out of 10 they don't. This one is a real race because it's got dangerous men in it, and there's every chance they will survive here to the bottom of the climb at just on 2 minutes and 63 kilometers left to race.
Well, it's put big pressure onto the main field, and everybody who'd hoped that a breakaway would succeed of 6 or 7 riders are probably not too happy in the fact that it's an 18-man breakaway. That's so much more difficult to pull back, and you can see a lot of riders, Phil, at the back end of the main field yo-yoing down the convoy of cars there. They're going back to take on board bottles and drinks. Extremely important on a day like this as we look at the time trialing position at the front, and I would expect to see here the face of what? Fabian Cancellara.
Sleep on the job here. He's just leaning on those handlebars, just imagining through his brain, pumping all the power into those big thighs, doing what he has to do at 25 miles an hour here. So Cancellara gets on with the job. Nicky Sorensen, the champion of Denmark, rides in his slipstream. Well, we're getting closer to the Pyrenees. I think you probably know that, but don't forget the Tour de France will continue live on Versus tomorrow morning. Regular time at the moment, 8:30 Eastern. It'll be stage 13. It might be a day for the sprinters, but I wouldn't bet on it. Lance Armstrong once won there by 19 minutes, or finished second there rather. And don't miss stage 14 either on Sunday morning. Now that's a special time, 7:30, because we're going into the Pyrenees. We will give you special extended coverage as the Tour de France, the most epic race ever, only on Versus. So as the field continues to just see just which way this breakaway is going to jump, at the moment it's around 1:47, but our computer constantly nudging a second either way, and only 61 kilometers to sort it all out. Boy, we're going fast today.
My name's Cindy.
My name is Michael.
My name.
Welcome back. Let's remind ourselves with our free credit score American standings. Levi Leipheimer is still best ranked in 6th place. Chris Horner is 25th. Lance Armstrong 32nd. Lost a few seconds yesterday, nothing much. Hincapie is there. Buchwalter enjoying his first Tour de France. Zabriskie saw a lot of him yesterday. Tyler Farrar tried to win the stage. It didn't quite work out for him yesterday. Let's find out what Levi Leipheimer is now thinking of his Tour de France at the start today.
Levi, you're familiar with this climb. You've done it in Paris-Nice. It's a steep climb. Do you think it's a climb that you can take a chance on to attack to probably get some time off some of the other riders that are near you?
No, unfortunately, it's a climb where I need to just hang on and limit my losses. It's a very explosive climb, only 3K, 10%. You know, it's time-wise very short, and it's painful, and position at the bottom is very important. So hopefully just, you know, try to be there with the best guys, and there's no way getting up it pretty. You just got to give it everything you got, suffer, put on your ugly face, and go for it.
With Schleck and Contador so close with first and second, there's a lot of guys right around you for third. Any one of those that you specifically mark?
It'd be nice, you know, to be able to follow Sanchez up the climb. Unfortunately, he's pretty explosive, so I think Menchov is a good wheel. He's nice and steady like me, and if I can stay around those two guys, that's a good step, I think.
All right, good luck. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, just to grimace and get up to the top of the climb, because they're all going to have 100% effort on up that climb. It's going to be very, very difficult for everybody, but that's why we think seconds can be made or lost. Looking at the town of Pradelles at the moment, which links the 3 counties of France here, Haute-Loire, Lozère and the Ardèche. It's right on the borders of all 3. We wander across the red roofs then of Pradel, looking for the bike riders today. The gap is holding at 2 minutes now, but getting closer to the sprint point for Thor Hushovd, which for the moment is his short-term target. He will not be thinking of the finish in Mende just yet.
No, this in fact, this little chapel down here that we're looking at is the chapel of Notre Dame de Pradel, which dates back to 1512. You can just see the statue on the top, and that was discovered in a field next to the hospital before it was put up onto the top of the tower.
The red roofs of the town of Pradel replaced by the riders as they're not too far away over the top of the church here. And they are closing in or holding. I'm not too sure. It's gone out to 2 minutes and 2 seconds now. They're not getting close to it. And this isn't a case of holding them when they want them. They're really working very, very hard to bring them back today.
Well, because of the presence of the three riders we keep mentioning, obviously the most dangerous is rider Heyerdahl of Garmin Transitions. He's just looking for 5 minutes and 42 seconds, and 2 or 3 minutes gain on a day like this is going to put him right up into the top 4 or 5 placings at the end of the day. And then all of a sudden the Canadian field can start to dream about the possibility of a finish on the podium. The podium position, I would have to say, third place for the moment is open to about 10 riders. Although I have to think that the two riders we've talked about a lot, Andy Schleck and Alberto Contador, they are head and shoulders above the rest.
Yes, they've got to go on the climb, because one of them will for sure, to test out who is going well. The face there just going down there, the Norwegian champion Thor Hushovd. 54, well, we'll call that 55 kilometers to go, so he's coming to the kilometer sign now for the sprint in Langogne. And if he gets there and he gets the 6 points, then he is moving a little bit clear of Pataki. He'll be wearing green tonight.
And that's what he's thinking about. That's what he wants, and he may well have a chance to grapple a few more points tomorrow. Tomorrow, again, a very difficult stage right the way through the southern part of France. A rolling stage like this with no flat part of the route at all. It's always up or down, and a very difficult leg-breaking stage in store for everybody. And that's if they've recovered from today's stage, because today's stage, the finish is way off in the distance there in the town of Mende, or should I say just above the town of Mende at the aerodrome, a climb of some 1,400 feet elevation.
Well, today these riders are running approximately 2.5 minutes ahead of the fastest expected time for the stage. First time they've done that, I think, since the tour started in Rotterdam, because they're getting into that town now of Langogne. They're due there in about 5 minutes time. They're going to be there pretty soon.
No, they certainly will, and that's going to be good for the man in the breakaway, Thor Hushovd, because for him it's an important number of points. But we did see at the last sprint point he was beaten to the line by Gerard Boll, who himself, the Lamprey rider, is a very good sprinter.
Very good. And
he will have to do whatever he can to get across the line in front of Thor Hushovd.
Yes, it's the Lamprey sprinter's first Tour de France, but he is a very good finisher. Today he's got to play second fiddle for the top sprint on the team, which is Pataki. But I have to say that he is a good sprinter, and he's now going to take on Thor Hushovd. There's the 1 kilometer now to go to the sprint.
You can see Hushovd has time to line himself up. The Cofidis rider on the front, just behind him, Anthony Charteau. Hushovd has got on his wheel Gerard Bolle. That's the rider with the pink shoulders on his jersey.
So the reason that Bolle, there he is sitting in that pink top jersey, fourth in line. His job now is to win the sprint, to take maximum green points away from Hushovd. It worked in Mariac, where he got the sprint over Hushovd, took away 2 points, and that kept Hushovd from taking the outright lead there. Whatever happens now, I can't see Hushovd not taking the lead, but Bolle will still want to take the main points. Looking at the faces now of the leaders, this is Moinard, the Cofidis rider, in the breakaway of those 18 men. But interest now swings for the moment from the yellow jersey, Paul, to the battle for green as we're approaching the sprint point.
Well, in second place there, being led out here by Anthony Charteau, is the Norwegian national champion, a man who is the defending champion in the green jersey points classification. And Hushovd is going to have to open up his sprint pretty smartish.
Well, he's going to have to go now, because Bolle has gone on the left of the road, and I don't think Hushovd is as quick as Gregor Bolle, the younger rider in his first, but he is this time. Hushovd is a real competitor, isn't he?
Well, you know, Phil, this is how he won the green jersey points competition. Thank you very much. He said 6 points in the bag, and that will now give him the lead by 6 points in this classification. He went out on a mountain stage. Cast your mind back to the Tour de France last year, and it was on a mountain stage that he garnered enough points to go ahead of Mark Cavendish. I think that gesture there, Phil, tells it all.
Well, 80 kilometres have passed by since the last sprint point, and the youngster, Greg Bolle, just 24 years of age, and maybe it's starting to hurt as the distance bites now, and it is his first Tour de France. Not the same for Thor Hushovd. So Hushovd gets the 6 points, Bolle 4, Charteau 2. So overall now it means that Hushovd has 167 and Pataki loses his green today, 161. So reversal of yesterday. Well, that's been a terrific competition, and thanks to Thor Hushovd, because what a wonderful competitor he is. I thought that was a self-portrait of Paul Show in there, but I don't think it was. 51 kilometers left to ride. We are really flying today towards the finish, and the showdown is right at the tail end today between this man here and the man in the yellow jersey. There he is. They know their big moment on today's stage is still to come. See you in a moment.
By Warner Brothers Pictures' Inception, The Dream is Real, now playing in theaters everywhere.
Welcome back as we get ready for the finish in Mende. Now inside 50 kilometers to go on today's stage. We're racing ahead of schedule. At the start this morning, a happy-looking Lance Armstrong talking with Frankie Andreu.
Lance, you know this climb, it's a very steep one. Well suited for you today, the finish?
Back in the day it was. I mean, it's a hard one, and it comes at the end of a hard day. It's long, it's twisty, turny, up and down. It's a fairly long stage. You know, it won't be, I suspect there'll be a break, so it'll somewhat neutralize the main field, but still, you're going to have guys that have to be careful, have to be in position. There's a lot of turns and roundabouts before the final climb, so the GC guys have to be up there, be nervous. It's going to be hard.
For the GC guys, Levi's in a good position. The goal of the team, looking for a move and a break, or just protecting Levi for the finish? Because obviously it's a fight going in there.
Yeah, well, we have to go in the breaks because I suspect Kesteparn will go in the breaks, and they're trying to win Team GC, as are we. So we got to mark them, and they got to mark us. So we'll have somebody in the breaks. It's just a question of putting the right guy there with a hard finish. You got to have a guy that can finish strong and either win the stage or not lose time to the Kesteparn rider.
You're already sweating, surviving the heat.
I mean, this has been the hottest tour that I can remember. I think most people, I mean everybody, not just the riders, but the journalists, the fans. I mean, it's hot. It's like Africa.
Well put.
Yeah.
See ya.
Yes, indeed. Well, the plan was there. Hasn't quite worked out because Kesteparn have got 2 riders in the breakaway, and that would mean that they will go into a much more clearer lead in the team if it's to stay that way to the finish. Right, on the other point, though, they've got a strong man up there in Andreas Kloden. We've had a flurry of attacks, too, in the main breakaway. They've all come back together again, but I await confirmation if, in fact, Thor Hushovd did sit up and drop off the break, because he looked as though he wasn't interested in moving with the attacks. So there's a little view of the breakaway, I think it is, they've come up to now, as they're trying to split it up here with 48 kilometers to go. Kloden willing to work, and this is also one Kesteparn rider has gone with him. There it is, Ryder Hagedal, absolutely wonder boy today in this move, which is going forward. 4 men trying to get clear, and so too Alexander Vinokurov. Well, they must have seen sun. There must have been a specific reason to launch the attack right there. Maybe in that little bit of a rise on the road, Paul, but they suddenly decided to go for it.
Well, I think we got to the point in the race when a lot of guys were soft pedaling. They weren't actually putting their back into the success of the breakaway, and somebody saw that and felt this is the time to try and split the race into a smaller working group with guys who are dedicated to making sure that they succeed. And the riders who've gone off the front are the strongest riders in the breakaway. Alexander Vinokurov, Andreas Kloden and Ryder Hagedal, joined there by Vasily Kirienka, who was second the other day on the stage into gap with Sergio Paulinho. Now these guys, I think now all of a sudden it's starting to turn the tables. It's going to make this breakaway a lot more dangerous.
A lot more dangerous, and the battle for the team race remained because Kesteparn have gone into the break along with Kloden of Radio Shack. There's a view back at the main peloton, still under the escort of Saxo Bank. And all of a sudden, nobody from Lamprey is up there now. Never knew why he was there in the beginning, but he's gone now.
I wonder if I need to ask this question.
I don't
Can
know.
Alberto Contador trust his own teammate Alexander Vinokurov, who's got into this breakaway and is looking to try and reinstall himself in the top 3 or 4 positions?
Well, it's how the old former Soviet Union cyclists, and everybody's now in their own countries, but in the old days it was the USSR, and when they rode stage races they used to leapfrog their men over like a game of chess, where they put different riders in the lead groups every day, and they gradually moved all the men up towards the top, and they really didn't care who won the race as long as it was one of the riders on the USSR team. That reminds me of that, and of course Vinokurov would know all about that because he rode for USSR in his very, very early career.
Yep. After that, he rode for the national team from Kazakhstan all over the world, in places like Australia and in Malaysia, and he is a great competitor. I don't think he's trying to really pull the wool over the eyes of Alberto Contador. I think it's a very good tactical move by Team Astana. Takes all the pressure off them, and it puts the pressure on everybody else in this bike race to chase down the breakaway of 4 riders, which is forming. They currently only have about 20 seconds over the remnants of that group, and we're still looking at a long way to go. But you see what that acceleration by those real top 4 men did. They've opened that gap out to 3 minutes.
But what about Ryder Hagedal? He's my hero today, this man. He's a big man for the big hills, and yet he's still very much a man heading for a high finish in this year's Tour de France. He's been up as high as 3rd overall. He had a rocky passage through the Alps, but he came out okay. Now he's gone into a move here that could see him going down to the Pyrenees, again in a high position. 3 minutes just over, so it's really opened up to the 4 leaders now, because they're getting their heads down and driving on. 46 kilometers is not a long way to the finish. Of course, there is the little matter of the 4-kilometer climb up to the finishing line. So as the race goes forward, we'll take a break. See you in a moment. Big life contenders standings. So there they are. Andy Schleck still leads, 41 seconds in hand over Alberto Contador, the defending champion. Denny Menchov is in 4th, Leipheimer in 6th, looking for higher. Ivan Basso, winner of the Tour of Italy, in 10th. Of the others, these I think are out of the hunt for yellow for sure. Michael Rogers, Carlos Sastro, 208 winner. Bradley Wiggins also not enjoying himself. He's fallen off, I think, today. Cadell Evans and Lance Armstrong. So let's enjoy now our specialized journey to the podium, and it is today Alberto Contador.
Pinto is my home. I have lived here all my life. The people here are very nice to me. I am very delighted to be here. The images of areas remind me of when I was young, so of course I enjoy living here. I remember the Polio Deportivo Stadium, the one that holds my name. Seeing the kids play, it reminds me of when I was young and I would play here. I remember back then the walls were not that tall and they had a gate with a big lock. So what we would do is hop the wall and play soccer.
Here we are at the Alberto Contador Pavilion. It's a special place for us and Alberto. When he won the Tour de France, we were given the opportunity to choose a pavilion and to name it after Alberto. Even though there are other places that are bigger or more well-known, Alberto decided that this would be the place that would bear his name. We cherish this place, and that is why Alberto chose it.
I continue to live here because I am very happy here. And of course, there are always possibilities of maybe moving in a few years. But I don't see myself leaving. I am very proud of Pinto, and here is where I will stay.
Yes, our specialised journey to the podium there. Alberto Contador, I don't think he can ever leave Pinto, can he, with all those honours being bestowed upon him. We should see him in the action today. He's got to keep a close eye on the yellow jersey of Schleck on that last climb of the day. It's getting closer. 43 kilometres to the finish, so that's about 39 kilometres to the start of the climb in Mende. Been a very quick race today, running ahead of the fastest schedule for the riders. Very concerned about the Canadian Ryder Hagedal, socking it to them today in that breakaway. Take away some of the memories of yesterday for Garmin Transitions when they lost Robbie Hunter with a broken arm, the normal lead-out man for Tyler Farrar. So looking at 350 and counting as we speak. Our computer hovering on the 351 now. The elastic may have snapped here. Almost certainly now this breakaway, especially the four up front, are going to get to the base of the climb ahead of the field. We're heading for a terrific showdown in the towns of Mende today. Strong riders here. Vinokurov, Claude. See the time gaps on the right. 5:42 for Hagedal, 6:31 for Vinokurov. They're taking back that time right now because it's nearly 4 minutes, Paul.
Well, right now we're looking at Ryder Hagedal. If we stop the race here, Ryder Hagedal, Phil, would be in 3rd place in the overall standings, and he's pulling himself right the way back up to the top end of the overall classification.
I can hear the screams from Alberta, Nova Scotia, all over Canada, because this is a ride. And I don't think we've had a big rider like this in the Tour de France since the great days of the Canadian champion Steve Bauer.
No, Steve Bauer actually over here at the Tour de France, I believe, with a party of tourists who he brings every year to the Tour de France to come and visit and ride around a certain part of the course. And every now and then you might get a chance just to see him at the Village de Page. Still looking pretty fit and lean, Steve Bauer.
Well, he is pretty fit. He's in charge of the Spider Tech team now, a team which he hopes will develop into a big team in the world of cycling in the next few years, and eventually finish up in this very event. Canada looking for its own pro team in the Tour de France. One day. Why not dream?
Well, why not? I think Steve Bauer is the right man to put it right up there as well. It's a team that's been very competitive. We've seen them, and I saw them win a stage in the Tour of Missouri at the end of last season. A very good sprint victory. They've got some very fast finishes, and with Steve Bauer at the helm, he's got a lot of information to be able to teach the riders the art of the trade.
Well, as you can see, the peloton now know that breakaway group has split up because they've got 30 seconds and 2 minutes 30 on that board, so they'll think, what's happening up there? A few riders have gone clear. Still not too much concern. They're going to gamble now because they haven't managed to bring this breakaway back. They're going to gamble that they will climb faster than the leaders. Probably won't catch them, but they will reduce the time gap. That'll be the next plan now, plan B, as we see Stuart O'Grady stalking through the peloton. So as we skim across a lake, this August the UFC returns live to Versus. The young phenomenon John Jones takes on veteran striker Vladimir Matyushenko in a light heavyweight showdown. The UFC on Versus 2 live August the 1st at 9 Eastern, and then the WEC is back with a bantamweight championship fight. Dominic Cruz makes his first title defense against hard-hitting Joseph Benavides. World Extreme Cage Fighting live August 18th at 9 Eastern, only on Versus. So the barrage here holding back millions of litres of water. Can they hold back the tidal wave as we head towards Mende today? Showdown time in this beautiful village deep in the Lozère. We'll see you in a moment. Yes, our Sun God stage summary here as the race gets into its last 38 kilometres. 18 riders broke away today after a little bit of shenanigans at the start. Then Anthony Charteau won the climb and has retaken the King of the Mountains. Hushoft has won sprints and he's retaken the green jerseys. All changes today. Let's look now, Paul, at the breakaway. This is the remnants of the breakaway just now. Is it a super move, this, by Ryder Hagedal? And I suppose we should have expected it, because he's always said he wasn't going to give up trying.
Well, you can't give up trying it, but you have to have the form to continue attacking like that. And he's obviously got great form. He's ridden through the Alps. He had a bad day a couple of times, but now all of a sudden he's still up at the top of the overall standing. He's still looking to try and ride himself into a podium position. He started the day in 12th. If we stop the race right now, Phil, he would actually be 3rd overall. And I don't think he could have expected that.
That's a nice change for him, as Sandy Cassar is working very hard on the front of the remnants of the breakaway, which is slowly getting back together. There is Konstantin Shipsov there of the HTC Columbia team of Mark Cavendish. He's just as his wounds were drying up from his crash a week ago, he's fallen off today, and they've all reopened, and he's been dressed by the doctor on the move, but he's still in the remnants of the breakaway. Breakaway of 4 are still clear, by the way. They're not that far up the road. And it looks now as though Cervelo have decided that now Hushov's done what he can do today. They're going to try and put their leader, Carlos Sastre, into the race.
Well, what a day that would be for them. That would be a real double-header for them if they could get Carlos Sastre the victory. Sastre is the kind of guy, he's far enough down in the overall standings, Phil, to make a big attack on the slopes of the climb up to Mende here and not get chased down by the Andy Schleck-Alberto Contador tandem.
Well, it's a big relief being breathed by Saxo, because they've got allies now in the Cervelo team here. Sastre's just tucked in down the line, by the way. And we've also got Ivan Basso, Roman Krusinger's Leaky Gas boys contributing as well. This is not a good sign for the breakaway, of course. So it's down to 3:36, 3:38 at the moment. So they are getting their way into that lead. I think they'll try and reduce it to 2 minutes in Mende, and then the battle of the climb, which these days is the Monte Long Jalabert. These are the faces of the men in the break. Kirienka is here, the face of Andreas Kloden, who's been a second-place finisher in the Tour de France, on the podium twice. New boy Ryder Hagedal, the tall man who seems to be a pretty good climber as well, a very strong bike rider indeed. He's only, well, he's 29 now, Paul, but he's done some things in his career.
No, he certainly has. Alexander Vinokourov just sitting at the back there. This is a great tactical situation for Team Astana to be in. It's the first time, I think, Phil, in the Tour de France this year that they've been in the tactical superiority position.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely right as well. But there's the peloton. The boys in turquoise is Alberto Contador's Astana team. He's got them all mustered now, right in position behind the Saxo Bank team of Andy Schleck. Those two have got to go. Pedal rev for pedal rev on the climb when we get there.
Well, they're just going around the same corner, in fact, that the riders in the breakaway went round a little while back, about 3 minutes ago. And you can see now that the pressure really is being put on that main field. Tonight, when these guys get to the finish in Mende, Phil, they will know that they've been in a bike race.
Tough day today. We go down to from Rodez tomorrow in the heart of the Ardèche. We move down out into Revel, which is outside the county, and it's always extremely hot. But you know, it's been extremely hot every day. Lance Armstrong saying this is the hottest tour he can remember, and that's saying something when he's ridden 13 of them.
Well, he should cast his mind back to 2003, because I think it was rather warm in 2003. In fact, it was the heat that nearly dethroned him when he had a very nasty time trial around the Cap Découverte and lost himself a huge chunk of time to Jan Ullrich.
Well, it's like suffering, isn't it, Paul? When it's gone, you tend to forget what it was like, and then it comes back.
Yeah, well, you always forget the pain. Unfortunately, you do, because certainly when I look at these images, I cannot remember the pain that I used to go through just to stay in contact with the Tour de France. On this occasion, these four guys, they've actually got themselves locked in to a 35-second advantage over the front end of that group that's chasing them. And it's not going anywhere currently, because those guys, the 12 riders behind, they know that if they lift up the pedaling action a little bit, they can pull the four men back.
But if these four get to the hill, the break will never catch them, because the four best climbers, I think, are here. Vinokourov is just a likely candidate for victory today, sitting at the back here. So too Andreas Kloden. Righto, then let's do the Cadillac Lead the Pack sweepstakes again. You log on to versus.com/lead the pack. Do it every day. Chance to be on the Tour de France for 2 next year, or a Cervelo R3 bicycle, or a yellow or a polka dot jersey. You need the code word, and there it is, Cadillac. All under pressure in the break. Anthony Charteau seeing the door opening in the middle, and the break is splitting again. So the pressure has gone on here now. Sipsov sitting at the back, just behind Gregor Bolet, who's been riding a very good first Tour de France there, number 202. It looks as though they've tipped down the other side, so it should come together again as far as the break is concerned. This is not the main break anymore, of course. We now have Kirienka, Vinokurov, Hezjedal and Claude up front. The overall gap about the same as when we took our last break, 3.5 minutes. See you in a moment.
Experience the tour like never before. Go to Versus.com and access the Versus Tour Tracker, where you can watch every stage live online and in HD. It's as close as you can get to the Tour de France without a passport. Available now on Versus.com.
All smiles, the Luxembourger, Andy Schleck. It really is his Tour de France to lose now, isn't it? He's the man in the yellow jersey. There he is today. His team so far still pulling him towards the final climb today out of the town of Mende. And it's going to be a tough old day of racing towards the end. Pressure is on inside the last 20 miles. There's our Radio Shack tracker pointing him out. And at the start this morning, Robbie Ventura hunted him out to find out just what his plans are for the day and how he's feeling.
Long stage day, Andy. Nice little kicker at the end, short, steep climb. What sort of impact, if any, will that final climb have on the GC battle?
I'm pretty sure, we'll see the GC contender in front in that climb. I mean, it's a hard climb, huh? But it's a climb, like I'm used to it, to train only in Luxembourg, longer than that we don't have, and yeah, I feel good, so hopefully I'll be in front, and you never know, maybe it's an opportunity for me for another stage, but the first objective is, of course, to keep this jersey and to maybe gain seconds on Alberto.
You talked about that final climb. Alberto was won on this final climb a couple of times. Will you expect him to be aggressive today?
Yeah, for sure, but also, to be... I gotta have a really bad day that he takes 40 seconds on me on that climb, but it's for sure a climb who fits him good. But me as well, he won it, and it was in Paris, so a little bit different date than it's now. Now we're July and it's boiling warm in here, so you cannot compare it. It's different circumstances.
Good luck today.
Thank you.
He's a confident man, isn't he, Andy Schleck? He really believes that he is the best, and if he believes it, he's going to race Contador shoulder to shoulder today. Well, we're still racing ahead of schedule. The formation of the group. This is the back of the main pack we're looking at now as the riders gradually come back into the action.
And it's quite easy sitting here, Phil, and commentating and think, well, these guys don't really seem to be riding along very fast at all. But I can tell you that the average speed in the main field is currently 51 kilometers an hour, which is 32 miles an hour. So they're not hanging around, and they certainly don't want to be sitting at the back like this. Jens Voigt has just gone back there. His job is to go back and get a few drinks for the boys, and then he's got to drag his body up along the outside of that line and try and get himself to the front of the pack and distribute the drinks to the lads.
Nicky Sorensen there. These are the teammates of the big teams. We are going one-on-one, though. There's no doubt about that. Andy Schleck says he doesn't really have any fears of the finishing climb, but he admits it's steeper than any of the roads he trains on in Luxembourg. He expects Contador to attack him, and he said that, or maybe he'll get a few seconds. He's about the only rider we've spoken to early this morning who thinks that the field will all be shooting at the GC at the bottom of the climb. Well, we're looking at the yellow numbers here on the back of Vasily Kirienka because they're Case Depon are the team leaders, but they're only by a few seconds over Radio Shack, and that's why Andreas Kloden is here for his team. These four guys are slowly pulling away. The overall gap to the peloton with yellow is now 3 minutes and 13 seconds. 28.5 kilometers to go to the finish, more or less. And that means about 20 23 kilometres or just on 15 miles before we shoot into this lovely town of Mende. But the left turn's a bit narrow, and then we climb out of the climb itself to the local airport here, which, by the way, is closed. The Tour de France is on the runway.
Yeah, a bit difficult to bring a small light plane in amongst the finishing line structures, I would have to say. You could pilot, you could possibly do it, but I don't think you'd want to try.
You'll have to dodge the finish podium when you land after about the first 500 feet. It's a very good finishing speed. Of course, it would be an ideal finish for a sprinter, but they won't be able to hold on the race up to the line, because they literally come on to the main runway and they race right down it, dead flat. The only thing is, they've got to really judge their finish today. It is a headwind right down the runway.
No, it certainly is, and just looking at the way this race is evolving, those 12 riders behind, they will not give up at all, but they're still locked in at that 40-second mark. They cannot catch these guys. There's a lot of firepower in this leading four. There is rider Hagedal, the Canadian, number 54, and as you said earlier, Phil, I'm certain that the people in Canada will be sitting on the edge of their seats right now, hoping and wishing that this man could climb a lot higher up in the overall standings. He's been a great cross-country mountain bike racer in the past. He finished second in the World Championships, but here he's really completely committed to riding on the road, and he's riding for a team which in the past has had some great success out of the Tour de France. 4th overall with Christian van der Velde a couple of years ago, 4th overall last year with Bradley Wiggins, and why not a podium finish for the Canadian rider Hagedal. With the time that he's pulling back today, he's looking at it.
We're going to know soon. This is the reforming of the breakaway. You notice Hushov's not there. He dropped off completely by the look of it. Now, don't forget, Versus has teamed up with Map My Ride for the second year to present the 2010 Aquafalla Tour Challenge. It's not too late to register, by the way, for the challenge and ride alongside the top pros in the Tour. Virtually, I'm speaking, of course. Get out and ride. Submit your ride to mapmyride.com/TDF and compete to win the leaders' jerseys, just as you would in the Tour de France. Riders can also win more than $135,000 in random prize drawings, including Cannondale bikes and Trek travel trips. Sign up today at mapmyride.com/TDF. All right, well, as the Tour de France continues on and still trying to work out what they can do with the leaders, let's go and have a word with Liam about the daily line.
Thanks, Phil. Cycling fans, be sure to stick around after stage 11 for more from Phil and Paul on the day's action from the Tour de France.
We've also got a British Open report from St. Andrews, and Rob the Numbers Guy drops some odds on LeBron's first season in Miami that you do not want to miss.
We look out now across the department known as the Lozère. This is a beautiful part of this very diverse country of France. The riders are going to climb up to the finishing line in Mende today, and we're getting closer to the town before the climb starts. 25 kilometers to run, not too much change in the status. So there's the peloton, and in the back drop there, the yellow jersey of Andy Schleck. He's so happy to be riding in yellow. He didn't seem to blink an eyelid at the thought if he wants to win the Tour, he would have to keep it for part of 2 weeks. He just wanted to wear it.
Well, he's a confident rider. Most of the big hills and the rolling hills are behind the riders now. The most important thing is what is on the horizon. How about that as a sight for sore eyes there? The banner indicating 25 kilometers to go to the finish. Vinokourov in this breakaway group looking for 6.5 minutes. Hagedal looking for 5:40. And he's actually looking for his team car to come up here. I think he wants to take on board some more liquid before we get to the 20-kilometer to go point.
That's right. When officially that's the end of the liquidity of the race. You can't come up to the riders. So I think the referees might allow it a bit longer today because of the climb at the finish. They can alter that rule as they go along. Now we'll see what they do. Anyway, Hagedal enjoying himself, but you know the main remnants of the breakaway not that far behind here. They're now under 25 to go. They're without Thor Hushoff. He decided to go back to the main field. He got the lead in the green jersey. That's what he was there for, and he just sat up once the attacks came that caused this split.
Well, that was Mauro Santambrogio, the Italian rider on Team BMC, who was trying to force the pace a fraction there. It looks like a little bit of a ragged organization in that 12-man chase group, while the main field, they are slowly starting to approach the leading quartet now. They were at one stage at 3 minutes and 40 seconds. They've now got it to just inside of the 3-minute mark, but there are different teams coming to the front to do the pacemaking. Brett Lancaster there, the big man from Team Cervelo Test Team. Matty Lloyd over to the left-hand side. It's a the kind of race that would suit him at the finish today.
Absolutely, and he's not a marked man as far as the yellow jersey is concerned, but I feel that everybody will try to steal time today, so they'll just all hit it and hope that they can do it.
David Miller sitting at the back end of the group. He's had a hard ride through the mountains. He got a couple of cracked ribs, but because this is the Tour de France, he's very happy to stick it out and try and stay in the event. The fact that you can see these riders just hugging to the right-hand side of the road is an indication that there is some breeze coming from the left-hand side of the road. These guys down the right, they're just trying to find a little bit of shelter from the wind.
Well, you can see the breeze is now turning into quite a stiff one because the trees are bashed around there. It's across the riders. It'll be a headwind finish right down the aerodrome plateau, though, and that could mean if there are survivors of the breakaway, they need to judge their sprint absolutely perfectly. This is Kirienka.
If he'll get the victory today. He was very much outwitted by Sergio Paulinho.
Yeah.
I think on paper he was the fastest finisher, but he made a slight mistake in looking the wrong way when the Portuguese rider attacked on the run into gap, and once the Portuguese rider had the gap, it was done.
So as the riders continue, no signs yet of the chalk bot on the road. Well, I will remind you about it as Lance Armstrong completes his final Tour de France. He'll continue to fight against cancer, and you can help. Go to livestrong.org to learn how, and while you're there, upload your message of hope, and the Nike chalk bot just might print it out here in the streets of France. Now, you may wonder why we can't show you that printing firsthand on the road. It's because it's done the day before when there are no cameras available. A lot of work now being done, and this is for Jurgen van den Broek too, who is really turning on the style for Belgium this year, giving them something to cheer in the overall. That's not often done for the Belgians these days.
Well, in the main field, we're looking at about 56 kilometres now. That's 34.5 miles an hour as they go slightly downhill here. What's happening now, Phil, is a slight change in the tactics of the other teams. Teams like Jurgen van den Broek and Denny Menchov are starting to feel their position threatened by Ryder Hezerdal.
The four riders here are still there, 2:44, but my opinion is that they're trying to race it down to less than 2 minutes now in Mende, and then they'll really go for them on the climb. But there's some strong riders in that four-man break. If they get to the climb, I have a feeling the bunch will not get to them. There's a nice straw bale effort on the bikes. I'm always amazed how they do those perfect wheels, Paul, because it's easy from the sky, but it's not easy when you're down there.
Well, no, it's not, but you have to have a bit of skill, and the farmers around this part of the world have got a real amount of skill to come up with that kind of work.
Leaky gas working hard now. And this has to be now for Basso and also for Kreuziger. So the pressure on at the back of the race now. It's time to really get down to business. Don't miss an all-new daily line on Versus today at 11:30 a.m. and again tonight at 11 p.m. Liam and the gang will continue to bring all the stories you need to know about sport. Jem will give all the best from the blogs. Rob will break down all of the numbers, while Reese drops the hammer on the biggest stories from the night in sports. That's the Daily Line today at 11:30 a.m. and tonight at 11 p.m. only on Versus, of course. We're only 20 kilometres away from the finish now, so 15 from the town of Mende. It's going to get pretty rough in the next half hour. See you in a moment. Welcome back to the Tour de France as we get to see a little bit of the area we're racing to now, the beautiful town of Mende. And it's above this town where we will finish today, and about 1,400 feet, in fact, higher than the town itself. OK, well, let's go upstairs now and have a chat with Craig Hummer and Bob Roll. What's on the menu for the primetime show, boys?
Phil, as you know, there's been a lot of talk over the past 24 hours about the ramifications of yesterday's sprint, and in our Head Sweats Ask Bobby segment, you're going to talk about that a little more.
Well, it was a very controversial sprint, very exciting sprint, but it did it provide us with a lot to commentate about, and we'll be reflecting on that throughout the stage, I think, and for a long time to come.
In our Geico history of American cycling, excuse me, we're going to look back at how Garmin Transitions began their team, and also Dr. Alan Lim is going to join us and make his favorite treats. We might save you some.
So back with the action. Look at the speed of these boys. They are just flying now towards Mende. Thanks very much, Craig. We're looking forward to that show tonight. These boys in the breakaway, 4 are still clear, hanging on in there, but the gap is coming down now. 1:49 across the board, just about 30 seconds behind these 4. The main chase from the original breakaway, and yeah, they are. No, that's not 30 seconds now, is it? Now that's 17 seconds, the official gap. Some bad news, and it's just been told to me. Tyler Farrar has abandoned the Tour de France. We have no further news on that because yesterday he seemed fine. He finished 3rd, but he has pulled out today on what has been a very fast stage. So that really is sad for Garmin Transitions. I don't know whether Cavendish is saying it's really rough for me today as well, or whether he's indicating that Tyler Farrar has had enough. But that was the picture we caught as they announced the news. Well, we're right, diving down now into the town. It's a nice, there's a lot of descending, Paul, that brings us into this beautiful town of Mende. And then the way out is around a little tiny narrow corner with a left and a right, just the width of a car, and then we're on the climb.
And the climb is horrendous. It's around about 11% the gradient at the bottom. It's very steep indeed.
15 kilometers to go. The riders just this moment passing under the bridge here. 4 leaders. It could be a blanket finish now because they are coming down. 1:46 across the board.
Well, there you can see on the far side of the valley, that's where we're going to climb up to. That, in fact, is the aerodrome just above the town of Mende. 15 kilometers, and Team Cervelo testing. I have a feeling today, Phil, that in fact Carlos Sastre is actually feeling pretty good. He's asked his guys to come to the front and try and pull all of this back together.
Well, there wouldn't be a dry eye in the house because Carlos is quite a popular boy, and if he's going to go, today's a good time to do it. You might gamble and think that the other boys won't hit each other, but I can't see how anybody can fail not to attack today. There's time available on these slopes, and it could be enough time to win the Tour de France, Paul, especially if Andy Schleck tries to open the gap a little bit more.
Well, Andy Schleck, we've seen, has got a great acceleration on these steeper gradients, and he may well look for that. But Andy Schleck will be certainly challenged by Contador.
Well, as they fly here now, they're nearly together, the chasers, and then the bunch are nearly up with these boys as well. Well, back to the start this morning now, as Robbie Ventura is chatting with Alberto Contador.
Alberto, you have won on this climb in the past. Will this be an opportunity for you to take some time back on Andy Schleck?
For today, it's a very different situation because it's a very hot day, and in Paris, 1 degree and now 30. It's a very different, and in today I think white to Andy Schleck because it's possible attack from him, and after I will see.
Thank you, Alberto.
You're welcome.
Well, we'll see what happens. I'm sure he will react if Schleck goes, and he's enjoying his Tour de France. Yes, he's won up there before, but he goes on a little bit further today over the top. These are the 4 leaders. He's got a teammate in it, of course, in his captain of the team, which is Alexander Vinokurov, and there's the chasers. 1 3/4 minutes the spread between the 4 front men over the top of the rest of the breakaway down to the peloton. It is going to be desperate moments as we drop into Mende now, and everybody will throw everything at everyone as they climb away from the town.
Yeah, the worst thing about this climb, Phil, is there's no tactics on a climb like this, because you've just got to do everything you can just to get up the climb. It is so steep. As I said earlier, you know, once you get to the bottom of the climb, it almost immediately tips up in front of you. The first part of the climb for the first kilometre is only 8.5%, but once you've cleared the first kilometre, the next 2 kilometres are 11%, and it really is. I mean, driving up this morning, it was extremely steep.
Yes, it was, and there's 9 kilometres to go now to the actual town itself before we start the climb. Now, where are we? The main break, we're still with the chasing group here, I think, at the moment, as they're still trying to jump away from that group. Is that Carlos Barredo, I think, who's got himself on the front here? He was the man involved in that boxing match a few days ago when the judges showed double levels there, because they really should have described Barredo and Costa Alfaro there for fighting, and they really did fight too. Now, the Cervelo boys for Carlos Sastre. The lime green boys for Basso and Kreuziger, all out to try and hit out at yellow today. We're 8 kilometers from the start of the climb. We'll take a break. See you in a moment. Let's have a look at our Pacific Life race update as the 4 leaders approach the town now of Mende, and getting ready for the assault of the Laurent Jalabert, the climb of Laurent Jalabert. Now, there is just one climb remaining today, so let's have a look at our Cannondale Mountain Profile course. Here we are. We've been right through these little ripples. The last ripple is the steepest, an average of 10%. Not very high in real terms. Takes us up to the top at 3,556 feet above sea level. And it's the last one on the line here now. The real name is the Côte de la Croix-Neuve, but officially it's been renamed back in 1995 as the Monte Laurent Jalabert because of his victory there then. Contador has a perfect position. As we look here, he's just behind the yellow jersey of Andy Schleck. Now, there's a lot of different coloured jerseys at the front today, and you're right, Paul, there's the white jersey of the world champion, Cadel Evans. Maybe a big test for Cadel now.
Juan Manuel Garate moving up over on the right-hand side for Rabobank. He's looking after Denny Menshoff and Robert Hessing, the best young rider in this race so far. This is going to be, you cannot imagine how important it is to start this climb. More important, I think, than any climb we've hit so far in the Tour de France, to hit this climb in the top 10, because it's a narrow climb, and if you hit the climb in 30th place, you could find yourself 20 seconds behind already.
Absolutely, because you've virtually got to queue up to get into the narrow roads in Mende before you can get onto the climb. The climb itself isn't a huge problem, except the gradient is, it is very, very steep. And it's the steeper than any of the climbs we've seen in the Alps, and of course no alike as long. We've just entered now the end town of Mende. We're heading into the narrow streets with the 4 leaders, but we are less than a minute spread across the board now. These 4 leaders are now trying to get up to the front. The remnant of the breakaway is about to be swept up by the peloton in the distance, and we're coming into a very narrow town with some tricky turns before we get onto the climb itself.
It's going to be a bit chaotic when the main field catches that 12-man chasing group, because they'll have to keep themselves organized. They want to go by them as quickly as possible to keep the front end of the main field nice and clean. This is Jaroslav Popovic, who's come up now, looking over his shoulders. He wants to make sure that Levi Leipheimer is well placed at the start of the climb, but he's lost him. He's looking back saying, Levi, where are you? Come up here and get on my wheel. I'll get you into the first 10 positions. But there's about 10 different teams trying to do exactly the same tactic here, Phil. Get their men into the top 10 going around the first corners of this climb, the Monte Laurent Jalabert.
Well, Popovic has gone down the line to look for Levi, I think. Levi is not very confident on the climb today. He says it's really not his style. It's an explosive climb. All he can do is suffer all the way up and hope it all comes out. And there's a lot of riders thinking that right now.
Confident or not, he has to start at the front. It is imperative to start this climb right at the front. That's still Mario Ertz at the front end of the main field. We're in the heart of the town of Mende now. That banner indicates 5 kilometers to go to the top. 3.5 of those, Phil, are uphill.
Yes, and we're very close to the left and right flicks as we go through the walled city, as it is just up here. Not a real city, this is a big town. And these are the 4 leaders. They'll get the first look at it. Ryder Hezerdal, been a real champion of the Tour today. The Canadian is trying for a high position as we go down towards the Pyrenees. Just starts to bite a little as we go down the main street. This street was totally closed off last night for celebrations of the arrival of the Tour de France. Big festivities in the town yesterday.
Kloden still setting the pace on the right-hand side there in the red jersey, followed by Kirienka, now followed by Alexander Vinokourov, and coming up into fourth position, Ryder Hezjedal. They are going now through a wall of noise. They've left all of the difficulties of the stage behind them. There is only one difficulty left. It's the final climb of the day, and what a cloud. We're in the middle of France, we're in the middle of nowhere, and everybody's turned out to see the Tour today.
And a lot of these people, if not half of them, live here in Mende. That's one of the left turns there now. And as we get round the next corner, it really does start to get very, very steep indeed. The right turn now, we're on the final climb here, and already Hezjedal is in trouble. The cameras don't really show you how steep these roads are. We go right up the trees in front in a rather terrifying, hair-pinning series of climbs. And Hezjedal has done a lot of work today, Paul, he's paying.
Well, he's paid the price there, and this at the front is Alessandro Pataki doing the pacemaking, and this is a bit of a shock to me. Also notice Andreas Kloden was in difficulty here, number 24. He can't stay in contact with Kirienka just up the front there, and Alexander Vinokourov, but I think that's all going to be secondary because they'll all be present with the main field very shortly.
Well, there is the move. Kirienka, so narrowly beaten the other day by Paulinho, has now got rid of everybody except the little limpet himself, Alexander Vinokourov. He is going to try and ride. These two I don't think will be caught, but I shouldn't say that at 32 seconds because it is quite possible now. The Norwegian flags fly. I can't believe Pataki, well, he isn't. He just cracked.
No, he hasn't. He's brought this man, Damiano Cunego, to the front of the bunch. He was thinking about the Petit Prince, the little man from Italy, to try and get a finish for him. This is an ideal finish for Cunego. If he can stay in contact here, he's got the kind of sprint to finish it off.
Well, I think Kloden did go back for Levi Leipheimer to try and bring him up here now because the climbers have got to have the day. There's going to be a lot of boys who are going to throw it at each other now. There are those that don't actually race for yellow but are going to cause trouble if they can.
I would guess that move there was coming from John Gadre of AG2R. There's the world champion, Cadel Evans, in fifth position, looking very comfortable right now.
Andreas Kloden, sorry, not Levi Leipheimer, is now coming up into the front half of the peloton. It looks like Gadre, his legs are rather thin, that's a good clue, as he tries now to dance away from these boys, but it's not against racing each other who's in front. As far as they're concerned with Schleck and Contador, it is matching each other and either trying to gain or not lose seconds.
Well, Kirienka and Vinokourov are locked together on the slopes of this climb. You get an idea now, Phil, to see just how steep this climb is. In these corners, it's not 11%, it's closer to 13%, especially on the inside of the bend.
And the crowd are appreciating this at the arrival of the Tour de France here. They put the airport on a plateau overlooking the town, 1,400 feet above it. And Lance Armstrong, no reason to race for big time now. His tour is done as far as overall is concerned, saving his energy for another day when maybe he'll go hunting for the stage.
Well, this is the damage done at the back by this climber, the Monte Laurent Jalabert, but the race is really on at the front where we've got two leaders. The two leaders are still, of course, the men who have really attacked the foot of this climb, Andreas Kloden and Vasily Kirienka.
The damage done now because the peloton have hit it at full-on speed. They had no choice. Cadel Evans is sneaking up the inside. Is he going to try and stretch them out? He's lost enough time not to counter his move yet.
Well, locked onto the wheel of the yellow jersey is Alberto Contador. Evans has moved up into second or third position. That's an indication that he's starting to feel that little bit better. It's a bridge too far here, I think, for John Gadre. He's got himself 2 meters 50 off the front end of the main field. And in fact, it's one of the teammates of Matty Lloyd who's come to the front end of the race for Omega Pharma Lotto. That's Daniel Moreno, the Spanish rider, a very good climber in his own right.
Looking after Jürgen van den Broek, his teammate here. Van den Broek fighting for the high finish for Belgium. Best place to the Belgian cyclist. A top 10 would be the best result for many, many, many years. Gadre continues. The gap isn't really coming down to those leaders. Now they're free to fly. They're heading up towards 3 kilometers to go. Vinokourov has shed Kirienka. When you look over your shoulder, you're cooked. And Kirienka looked over his shoulder. So now Alexander Vinokourov is free to fly, hot to trot, a stage win on the horizon.
He's now going under the banner of 3 kilometers to go. He's popped Vasily Kirienka off his wheel, and this is the moment that he's been waiting for. Ryder Hezjedal is about to get absorbed by the front end of the main field. feel, and all of the heads of state of the Tour de France are still present and correct. Nobody has yet launched a move off the front end of the peloton, but Alexander Vinokourov may well have the move here, which indicates to me Alberto Contador, Phil, if he thinks Vinokourov can win the stage, won't make a move.
Well, Vinokourov, who disgraced himself in the Tour de France by changing his blood, he served the suspension, he's come back, he thanked the organisation for allowing him back in the race. Now we presume he's riding totally clean here as he continues up the climb. 3 kilometres to go now for the whole peloton. It is a total scramble.
Well, Mick Rogers just holding on to the back step of this bus here, a bus which has been rapidly reduced in numbers. He's over there on the right-hand side going slightly backwards. Luis Leon Sanchez, 161. Nicholas Roach, number 81. Bradley Wiggins, number 31. The big names, Phil, they're all coming to the back. It's like that big distillery once again.
Well, this is really a shame for Team Sky, but they are not really in this race at the moment. Wiggins is now in big trouble once again. The pressure put on him, I think, to try and win the Tour has just exploded his legs completely. He's lost his morale.
Well, Carlos Sastre was right at the back end of that group. Joaquim Rodriguez is over there. He's looking very dangerous, and he's a man who knows how to perform well on the slopes of a climb like this. This is the man that everybody thought might have a crack today, number 91, Carlos Sastre. Robert Gessing is in the group in the white jersey.
Well, in the background there, that walking bottle is the clean bottle guy, and I have to tell you that that bottle he advertises, he's invented. It unscrews at both ends so you can wash them and use them all again. Here's Alberto Contador, still riding alongside now, still looking good, gazing around, almost stargazing there as he sits on the side of the yellow jersey. These two boys, Paul, seem to be just riding the mountain and they're not attacking.
Well, I think Alberto Contador's not going to make a move here this afternoon because of the fact that he's got Alexander Vinokourov in the front. He won't make a move to try and damage the possibility of getting a stage victory for Team Astana. Check that for a face of pain. This man now has got to do all kinds of things to pull himself inside out. Andreas Kloden is still surviving off the front end of the main field. He's about to make contact here with Vasily Kirienka, and will he go straight by him? I think he might.
Well, if he can get straight by him, of course, they might well steal the team lead because Radio Shack and Case Depon are almost equal on time, and it could well be a reversal of that as we now see an attack by Katusha.
Joaquim Rodriguez, this is the man who's got a very good chance of getting the victory. This is his kind of climb, and Phil, he's far enough down, I think, for them to let him go. They don't need to respond. He started the day in 9th position overall.
Well, a typical man for the move indeed, Joaquim Rodriguez. But look at this, Contador has gone, and he's a little bit slow to react here. Well, everything Paul was just saying, completely reversed. Contador has gone, and now we expect a reaction here from Andy Schleck. If he loses time on this climb to Contador, I think he'll lose the Tour.
Well, Andy Schleck has just sat down in the saddle. He tried the acceleration to get across. He's leapt across to Joaquim Rodriguez here, looking over his shoulder. He's got the face of concentration. He's around about 500 or 600 meters to the top of the climb. He's catching all of the riders in front of him. There's Kirienka. There is Andreas Kloden, and he's going to go again, the man who wears number 1.
Well, Rodriguez needs to jump onto the train of Contador here because they're coming towards the summit of the climb, but there's still a little bit of a slope left. And this is a surprise. I never thought we'd see Andy Schleck not react to that. I'm not so sure he can, but there's still time. Look at Jürgen van der Broek.
Jürgen van der Broek, 101, the leader of Omega Pharma Lotto, knows that he's got a chance here of pulling himself up into 3rd place overall at the end of the day. But you know what? Andy Schleck has not given up the ghost just yet. 2 kilometers to go to the finish, but it's only about 1 kilometer to go to the top. And we've kind of forgotten, hadn't we? Alexander Vinokourov is still surviving by 19 seconds ahead of Kloden Kirienka, but it's now been changed to Contador Joaquim Rodriguez.
Well, in the times we've come here and seen people like Laurent Jalabert win, we never saw crowds like this. They are enormous. The Tour de France continues to grow in popularity, and look at the catches coming. He's come right up to him. So now Contador has been joined by Vinokourov and Rodriguez. These boys are dancing away from the peloton, and very soon it'll level out.
Vinokourov is doing everything he can now to find a bit of extra energy, while further down the slope Andy Schleck is doing exactly the same thing. At the start of the day, Phil, he had a 41-second advantage over Alberto Contador. He's losing a little bit of that just now.
Alberto Contador knows the finishing line. He gave us every reason to believe he would not bother today, but he's taken it off his own teammate. Rodriguez is hanging in, but you know, 41 seconds can be out the window in a threshold.
Right on his wheel, Jurgen van der Broek. Sammy Sanchez was there as well. They're just about to crest the top of the climb here. I've got a funny feeling, you know, we may well get a victory by Joaquim Rodriguez here because there's no reason for Alberto Contador to win. He might need some allies a little bit further down in the road.
The crowd just stretches and stretches from the town of Mende onto the airfield itself. Once they level, they'll turn left onto the runway, and at the speed they're going, there's a very good chance they're going to take off.
Well, they need to take off because this runway here looks like an aircraft carrier. Alberto Contador looking back over his shoulders to see what time of gap he's got. But Andy Schleck has not given up yet, Phil. He's going to fight all the way to the finish. Just in front of him there is Alexander Vinokourov.
They are over the top of the climb. It's now eyes down for the flat ride to the finishing line here. Time trialing might be the strength of Contador. It's not of Andy Schleck. Rodriguez knows that Contador is racing for time, yet he's still going to help him.
Well, he's shaking his head a bit. I'm sure that Joaquim Rodriguez will do whatever he can to work with his compatriot there at the front end of the main field. He realizes Contador needs time, and Joaquim Rodriguez wants a stage victory out of this. There's some pretty serious men in this group too, because not only in that group was the Jurgen van der Broek, but also in the group just sitting on the back was Sammy Sanchez and Denny Menchov.
Well, this little select group here is containing the white jersey there of Gessing and Leipheimer, but this is the race now. The clock will start as soon as we swing onto the runway. There's the runway. We are now taxiing for the finishing line here, all the way up the road into a headwind, and Alberto Contador keeps looking at Rodriguez. Rodriguez has no reason to hit him. He's going to follow him and try and beat him in the sprint, and he can sprint, Rodriguez.
Well, he's a great sprinter. I've seen him win stages in Paris-Nice. He's onto the wheel of Contador. Contador actually wants this win, and they've both opened up the sprint.
Opened up to go. Now Rodriguez is going for the win here, but is Contador going for yellow? Little look over his shoulder. Rodriguez gets the victory. Alberto Contador is in second place here, and Vinokourov a little upset with third place. The time will not be enough though. Van der Broek comes home with the maillot jaune, but Contador has taken back about 11 seconds.
Well, that's going to make him 30 seconds behind Andy Schleck in the overall stand. There's Levi Leipheimer coming in at about 18 seconds. This climb, Phil, once again has split the race to pieces. Here's the next group. This is Damiano Cunego, Bradley Wiggins trying to survive. Luis Leon Sanchez is in there, and Cadel Evans.
Well, it's good to see Wiggins suffer like that, as he did on Mont Ventoux, and he finished fourth in the Tour de France last year. The face of Michael Rogers coming up towards the line at the moment. It is a tough day for them all. It has been just a scramble up the hill here in Mende.
There's Kirienko, the man who was in the breakaway all day. He's come in 48 seconds adrift. Mickey Rogers now looking for 53 seconds with Hejerdal, and just on the back of that group as well, it looked as if it was Nicolas Roche.
Well, Rodriguez in his first Tour de France has won his first ever stage in this race. It was a short uphill finish for him. Here's Sylvain Chavanel bringing home a small group of 4 men.
Just on the back of the group, Christophe Moreau, a good ride up the climb by him. It's going to be interesting to count back the Radio Shack performance here, Phil, because I have a feeling that Team Case d'Epargne will have extended their lead in the team race.
Well, as they come home, all this damage has been created in the last 4 kilometers of the day. Unbelievable. As you look out across the range here of the department of the Lozère, and it's all been enacted on the top of it. Joaquim Rodriguez is the winner today's stage, just on 5 hours of cycling for him today. He's outsprinted Contador, the only rider who will get in the same time. Vinokourov just lost 4 seconds. He wasn't happy about being caught by his teammate either and taking third place, but he had his chance. Jurgen van der Broek continues to show us he is a man for Belgium. Fourth for him. Andy Schleck concedes 10 seconds, so his lead tonight will be 31. Sam Sanchez in 6th, of course he'll hold 3rd. Andreas Kloden in 7th, he'll move up a little bit. Menchov should hold on his high position in 8th. Top 10 completed by Roman Kreuziger. Well, what a tremendous day it was today. Cadel Evans finishing in 15th, Wiggins losing 31 seconds in 14th there. Leipheimer finishing in 11th place, so Levi not conceding too much in the end. He had to make a late run, though, to get into the pictures, that's for sure. But a great win in his first Tour de France for Joaquim Rodriguez. He is a man for the day, and a good win for Katusha as well. There's the sprint finish, but Alberto Contador, he's the big winner today. Coming up, standings and podiums. Lance Armstrong finishing. We saw him just call it quits as they started the climb, but he comes in here in this big group, happy enough with his day. I can see Koos Moerenhout also in there as well. Lance just whirling round, heading back down for the team bus. Let's have a look now then at our Road ID Ride of the Day. Well, it was the move came on the climb, which as the blanket finish started already up front was Alexander Vinokourov, but as soon as Alberto Contador went, Rodriguez had a great ally. They passed Vinokourov, and Rodriguez in his first Tour de France gets his first ever stage win. It must feel good. And just making sure he finishes in the same time there, Alberto Contador. And if you want to be a winner just like Joaquim Rodriguez, head on over to roadid.com/TDF for a chance to win over $13,000 in prizes, including a next year's model of the Trek Madone. There's the situation then. Rodriguez gets the win just inside 5 hours today. Very fast time. Alberto Contador, same time, lost nothing. Vinokourov 4 seconds back. Van den Broek keeps the flag flying for Belgium in 4th. Andy Schleck finishes in 5th, but concedes 10 seconds. Doesn't sound a lot, but it might be. Samuel Sanchez finishing with Schleck, so too Andries Kloden, Denny Menchoff. Robert Gessing just tailed off a little bit with Kreuziger, and I think when we look further, you'll find Leipheimer also finishing in that group 15. Oh, just docked him 2 more. So Levi was 17 seconds off. Damian Acuna going 13th, Brad Wiggins 14th, 31 down. Cadel Evans, the world champion, former leader of the race, 31 down as well. Basso in the same bunch, along with Chris Horner, Carlos Sasser, Sanchez, and Nicholas Roach. Right, time for the highlights of the stage. A very good day of racing indeed. Andy Schleck just didn't know what was going to come, did he? When he left this morning, he thought he was feeling pretty good. Alberto Contador was convincing everyone, I've no need to attack, and I probably won't. Well, the leaders got away, and then they split up. There was 18 men got out in front today, and Ryder Hezjedal for a while was up into 3rd place overall in the Tour de France. At the second sprint of the day, this was one that mattered. Thor Hushovd won it, and he was very pleased with that, and as a result he's got back in green tonight, and as soon as he'd won that, there was a break, and he went back to the team car and said, I'm going back to the bunch, and that's what he did. These 4 riders got clear soon after that sprint, and they started to make good ground. The 30 seconds they'll look fragile as they started the climb up to the finish. The first to go from the leaders, Ryder Hezjedal, just couldn't hang on. Same to be said for Andries Kloden. He cracked. 2 riders going clear, Vinokourov and Kirishenko. And it looked as though they might stay together to the top, but then all of a sudden Alexander Vinokourov decided to go it alone, and then from the pack came an attack by Joaquim Rodriguez as all the riders were being picked up one by one. Jürgen van den Broek tried to reach him. He couldn't do it, but when this guy left the pack, he had no trouble. A very slow reaction from Andy Schleck, because I really believe he didn't think that Contador was going to make a move today because his teammate was alone up the road. Schleck gave it his all to try and repair the damage, but this is a power climb, and it wasn't going to happen. The 2 of them got together outside the last kilometre to go. As they raced up towards the line, they went onto the airstrip, into the headwind. Contador just wanted to hold Joaquim Rodriguez's wheel to make sure there was no time split, and he would get the same time as the winner of the stage. And as soon as they hit the line, it was then the clock that started counting, and in the background, it was a good recovery from Andy Schleck. He was further behind than that. Happy smiles to the former champion of Spain here, Rodriguez. So, a very, very active day of racing. This Tour de France has been excellent this year. The weather has guided us round France as well. And these are the most difficult roads possibly in all of France. So we're now waiting for the boys to just comb their hair, have a little face wash, and get out on the podiums. So Rodriguez is the man in charge today. We'll see him on the podium in a few minutes, and we'll also see Schleck just about in yellow. See you in a moment.
10 Tour de France on Versus is brought to you by Pacific Life. For insurance, annuities, and investments, choose Pacific Life. The power to help you succeed.
Final quick reminder as we look here at Mende, the town itself, and about our Cadillac Lead the Pack sweepstakes. You could be with us on the Tour de France next year, trip for 2, or riding a Cervelo R3 bike. Today's code word is Cadillac. Please log on to versus.com/lead the pack. Let's get down quickly now to the stage podium. He's about to come out, I think, if he's not already there. No, here he is. Joaquim Rodriguez. This is his 4th win of the year. 31 years of age now, Joaquim Rodriguez. And he finally gets to ride the Tour de France for the first time, and he wins a stage. I'm not surprised, he's delighted. Good result too for Team Katusha. So it was a typical finish for him. He likes those short stabs at the end. He's triumphed on those types of courses before. Let's have a look now how the overall stands tonight, courtesy of Michelob Ultra. There aren't changes as such, but there are differences. This is Andy Schleck, now 31 seconds ahead only of Alberto Contador, lost 10 seconds. Samuel Sanchez stays 3rd, Denny Menchoff 4th. Top 5 remain the same. Jürgen van den Broek also in there. Hotting up the battle, though, for 3rd place, but Sammy has holds it tonight anyway, and will probably do so tomorrow. Not sure if I can show you any more of these, but Leipheimer hold on to 6th with a fine finish today. Gessing holds on to 7th, and Joaquim Rodriguez has now moved into 8th today with that winning performance. Ivan Basso 11th, Vinokurov still in the top 12 here. Hejjedal 13th, Nicholas Roach 14th. Back out to the podium. Andy Schleck now gets his yellow jersey. Boy, there was a moment I thought he might have lost it by perhaps 1 or 2 seconds. A wry smile off the podium. This is an explosive climb, and he couldn't explode, could he, when he saw the break go from Alberto Contador. Don't forget the line, says Bernard Hinault, passing it up there. There he is. Handsome thing, isn't it? I'm talking about Andy Schleck, not the line. As Andy Schleck there smiles out at the crowd. Now, as we heard, Tyler Farrow was dropped on a climb. He abandoned, so let's find out why. Speaking to Matt White.
Matt, a little bit more bad luck today. Tyler Farrow drops out of the Tour de France today. Can you tell us a little bit about it? What were the circumstances? What happened?
Yeah, well, every day after Tyler sprints, he's in a world of pain. You know, people forget he's got a fracture in his wrist, so he was in a lot of pain today and got dropped on the first climb. I think he was with Lars Boom for a while there, and then couldn't even hold Lars Boom's wheel.
Was he emotional at the time when he came back into the car? I mean, he had such big hopes at this year's Tour de France to win stages. Where is he at mentally?
Mate, I haven't seen him. Obviously, I was at the front of the race, but I'm sure he's going to be upset. But mate, Ryder should be very proud. He's soldiered on and done his best with a terrible injury, and he just couldn't do it anymore.
Thanks, Matt.
No worries.
Yeah, it's always sad. Nobody wants to abandon the Tour. My goodness me, Tyler Farrow really has worked to stay in this race from his injuries, even up into that big finish yesterday, which resulted in the disqualification of HTC Columbia's Mark Renshaw. But he's gone today. So let's have a look then at our tomorrow's route, our Radio Shack route. And this is going to be, well, who knows what it's going to be. Lance Armstrong once finished 2nd on this stage. The two riders 19 minutes ahead of the field. So maybe that'll happen. We're going down to Rodez. It's 110 kilometers away from where we're sat at the moment. Once we leave Rodez, we're wandering over these little undulation. 2 4th categories, a 3rd category, another 4th, always nagging away at the legs. Guaranteed to be a scorcher down this region of France as we race into the finish, but there's no uphill, no nasty at the end. Small little climb, could be a springboard from a small breakaway. Watch out for a break working tomorrow. That's our Radio Shack route, as the riders now earn a well-earned rest. Of course, we'll be back in the saddle tomorrow morning. Our usual time, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, stage 13, prime time coverage, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So there you have it. It was a great day of racing today. These boys are hitting each other every chance they get. 176 riders are still continuing. All of the highlights, exclusive content, updates and blogs go to versus.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at VS Cycling and enjoy keeping up to date on all of the Tour de France. Our clothing is provided by Izod, and today was a real battle as we climbed up into the department of the Lozère. And what a great win it was for Joaquim Rodriguez, but what a great moment of opportunity taken by the man who could still yet win a Tour de France for the 3rd time. Stay tuned now. Up next, it'll be the Daily Line from Paul and me, and we'll bring you the highlights from today's stage. From everybody here, high on a plateau in the middle of nowhere, we say goodbye and see you tomorrow.